Statements pursuant to Standing Order 53.1. The Honorable Senator for Kisumu County, Senator Professor Tom Ojiambo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise under Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health concerning the status of health care service provision in all sub-counties in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, concerns have been raised about lack of adequate supplies to health care facilities and stalled health care related projects in Kisumu County, with some experiencing inordinate delay, in all of which have a ripple effect on the provision of health care in Kisumu County. In order to encourage the prudent use of county resources, the county executive must be held to account in its implementation of projects. It is in this regard that I am seeking this statement. In the statement, the committee should, 1, examine the state of health facilities in Kisumu County and submit a report on the completion status of all health-related projects for the financial years 2017 to 2024, disclosing the budget expended on each project so far and the budget for completion and equipping of projects in Nyando, Muhoroni, Nyakach, Kisumu East, Kisumu West, Kisumu Central, and Seme sub-counties. 2, state the safety measures in place for the health workers in the said sub-county health facilities, disclosing whether there is protective gear for workers serving in health hazard units and the ratio of protective gear to the workers assigned to the units. And lastly, provide details on the Marwa insurance scheme, including its coverage areas, current enrollment figures, and the beneficiary demographics. Inform on its funding sources and the financial probity, and assess its sustainability and effectiveness, considering the national transition to the Social Health Insurance Fund. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Senator for Singishu County, Senator Mandago. That statement is dropped. Statements pursuant to Standing Order 56, 1B. The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. That statement is dropped. The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations.
Honorable Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 56.1b to make a statement on the activities of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations for the period commencing January-March 2024. Honorable Speaker, during the reporting time period, the committee has carried various activities pertaining to the mandates. As a snapshot, the committee has transacted the following legislative businesses. A, the committee considered 2 bills which is concluded and tabled in respective reports in the House on 29th Thursday, February 2024. The County Government Amendment Bill 2023, Senate Bill number 25 of 2023, and the County Assembly Service Amendment Bill 2023, Senate Bill number 34 of 2023. B, the committee has processed 10 statements which were sought from the committee. Of the 10, the committee has considered and concluded 2, leaving 8 statements pending before the committee. C, the committee held a consultative meeting, retreat, with the Principal Secretary of the State Department of Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee, which deliberated on matters relating to devolution and intergovernmental relations, including the status of transfer of devolved functions and the valuation and verification of assets and liabilities belonging to the counties. I'm pleased to report that the 2 offices have robustly carried out the exercise and at the final stage of completion. D, in a remarkable display, the committee visited Trans Nzoia County and successfully mediated a long-standing dispute between the county governor and his deputy, bringing harmony to the previous strained working relations which had threatened to hamper the smooth running of the county. I think it was a wonderful job done, and the committee has achieved. The deputy governor has not been working with the governor for the last 1.5 years. But now that they're working together, and this is actually a big achievement for the committee. The committee is currently considering matters concerning the alleged discrimination in the implementation of development projects in various wards in Meru. The committee has invited the government of Meru to submit various documents to the committee that will provide relevant information on the implementation of projects with the county. Additionally, the committee shall conduct a project inspection and public participation in the various wards of the county where the aforementioned allegations were made. Honorable Speaker, the situation in Meru is actually still fluid, and we have a lot of communication from various members of the Assembly that they have been denied development by the county government, and actually we are obliged to visit the county, the Meru county, so that we can be able to verify all these things. Honorable Speaker, the committee has also future plans. We have planned for the coming sessions period to conduct a county visit to Meru to meet the county governor, deputy governor, the members of the county assembly in the effort to foster a harmonious working relationship between the stakeholders to ensure that the smooth running of the county affairs. B, retreat with the deputy governors of all the 47 counties to deliberate on matters affecting the effective performance of the official duties in the counties. C, to look into the performance of the counties on implementation of the budget with a view to oversighting the utilization of the resources meant for the devolution. D, conduct a post-legislative scrutiny of the Urban Areas and Cities Act of 2011 with the objective of proposing amendments to the framework of the management and governance of the cities and urban areas. E, to look into the process of dissolution of the county government with a view to making proposals on the enhanced role of the Senate in the process, and to look into the current laws on impeachment of the county governors, including the proposed impeachment procedure bill. Lastly, Honourable Speaker, I wish to thank your office, the office of the clerk, and all the leadership of the House for the support they have given, the steadfast support they gave to the committee. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Education.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 56(1)B to make a statement relating to the activities of the Standing Committee on Education for the first quarter of the third session, covering the period between 15th February 2024 to 15th April 2024. The Standing Committee on Education is established under Section 228(3) of the Senate Standing Orders. Is mandated to consider all matters related to education and training. During the period under review, the committee held 17 sittings, during which it considered 17 statements, 2 public petitions, 1 bill, conducted 2 inquiries, and undertook 2 county oversight visits. During the same period, the committee hosted 1 foreign delegation from the Republic of Uganda and held meetings with 2 counterpart committees from the county assemblies of Kajiado and Taita Taveta. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the period under review, the Early Childhood Education Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 54 of 2023, which seeks to provide for the improved remuneration and better welfare of teachers serving in early childhood centers in the counties, was committed to the committee for consideration. Pursuant to the provisions of Article 118 and Standing Order 145(5) of the Senate Standing Orders, the committee invited interested members of the public to submit their representations on the bill and further held an engagement with the Council of Governors in order to acquaint itself with the implementation status of the early child development education ECD policies in the counties and the challenges facing implementation of the said policies. Honorable Speaker, sir, the committee has reviewed all the submissions from the stakeholders and had consequently prepared its report on the bill, which is currently undergoing processing for tabling. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the period under review, the committee considered the following 2 petitions. A, petition concerning the discrimination by Teachers Service Commission on payment of hardship allowances and enhanced house allowance to some teachers in Kilifi County, and B, petition concerning the discrimination in the payment of hardship allowance to teachers in Taita Taveta County. The issues raised in the two petitions are on inclusion and classification of some parts of Kilifi and Taita Taveta counties as hardship areas, and payment of attended hardship allowances to the teachers in these areas. Petitioners in both petitions state that they qualify to be paid hardship allowances as per legal notice number 534 of 1997 and the collective bargaining agreement CBA between Teacher Service Commission TSC and the Teachers Union. During consideration of this petition, Mr. Speaker, the committee sought information and reports from the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Public Service, Performance and Delivery Management, and the Chief Executive Officer of the Teacher Service Commission TSC. The preliminary findings by the committee indicate that there are discrepancies in the designation of hardship areas within various sectors of the public service. The committee was, however, informed that the Minister of Public Service and Gender established an interagency technical committee in March 2019 to examine the current policies on hardship allowances and streamline payment. The committee is therefore scheduled to meet the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Public Service, Performance and Delivery Management on Thursday, 25th April 2024, to seek supplementary information on the issues raised in the petitions and thereafter prepare its report. Honorable Speaker, the committee regrets delays in conclusion of these petitions, which had been occasioned by the unavailability of sufficient information and reports and frequent requests for postponement of meetings by the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Public Service, Performance and Delivery Management. And Mr. Speaker, sir, during the period under review, 15 statements were sought from the committee in addition to 12 statements that were not concluded in the second session. In its consideration, the committee sought reports and responses from the Ministry of Education, Teacher Service Commission, county government departments, and other relevant state agencies. The committee has since considered and concluded a total of 17 statements. A comprehensive status of the statements sought from the committee is annexed to this report, Mr. Speaker. During consideration of these statements, the committee identified common thematic areas and invited the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Education, the Chief Executive Officer of the Teacher Service Commission, and the Chairperson of the Council of Governors to deliberate on the issues raised by members. The reports and responses received from these agencies have since been shared with the members, and supplementary issues and matters requiring classification have been referred back in the relevant agencies for additional responses. Honorable Speaker, on Thursday, 28 March 2024, the committee held a meeting with the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Education, to address concerns raised in the release of capitation funds to learning institutions, the infrastructural development, and the congestion of learning institutions in the country. During the second part of the third session, Mr. Speaker, the committee is scheduled to continue engagements and follow up on the implementation status of the policies on the new university funding model and the competence-based curriculum, CBC. The committee is also scheduled to follow up on the government commitment towards expeditious release of the competition fund to learning institutions, payment of pending bills by the universities, and the implementation of a medical insurance cover to learners following termination of EduAfia. The Committee of Early Childhood Development Education, ECDE teachers, and the status of infrastructural projects undertaken by county governments in the education sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee has initiated two inquiries. A, an inquiry into the implementation status of early childhood development education, ECD policies in the counties and plight of ECD teachers and caregivers. And B, an inquiry into the infrastructural development and the congestion of learning institutions in the country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the period under review, the committee concluded two county oversight visits. The committee conducted an oversight visit to Taita Taveta County to meet with the petitioners on the petition concerning the discrimination of payment of hardship allowance to teachers in Taita Taveta County, and to meet with the governor to deliberate on the issues raised in the statement sought on the management of Taita Taveta County revolving education fund. The committee further conducted an oversight visit to Kajiado County to acquaint itself with the implementation status of early childhood development education, ECD, and technical and vocational education and training, TVET, policies in the county. Mr. Speaker, during the first part of this session, the committee hosted members of the Education Policy Review Commission, APRC of the Republic of Uganda, who are in the country for a fact-finding mission. The committee was informed that the Education Policy Review Commission was established to investigate issues affecting the education and sports sector in Uganda and to generate recommendations and draft a white paper that is a macro policy framework for education and the sports services. Mr. Speaker, in the period under review, the committee has also had its share of challenges during the processing of the pending legislative business. These include incomplete and unsatisfactory responses from the ministries and government agencies, frequent requests for postponement of the committee meetings by different stakeholders invited to provide information, and quorum hitches. As I conclude, I wish to thank the members of the committee for their diligence and contribution during committee activities. I also wish to thank your office and the office of the Clerk of the Senate for the continuous support accorded to the committee in its work in executing its mandate. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Signed, and this senator is known. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Gloria Oroba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 52-1 to make a statement on a matter of general topical concern, namely the 8th International Parliamentarians Conference on the implementation of the program of action of the International Conference on Population and Development, ICPD, that was held in Oslo, Norway from 10th April to 12th April 2024. Mr. Speaker, parliamentarians from across the globe attended the conference, which was held as the world commemorated the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the ICPD program of action. Discussions centered around the challenges encountered and opportunities presented in championing sexual and reproductive health and rights. Mr. Speaker, parliamentarians who attended the conference acknowledged the progress made in advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights, despite the setbacks encountered due to societal challenges, the COVID-19 pandemic, and other global crises. Emphasis was placed on the critical role of parliamentarians in championing and effecting change towards universal access to sexual and reproductive health services, particularly for marginalized groups like women, girls, and those affected by crisis, as well as the elimination of gender-based violence and harmful practices. Mr. Speaker, the parliamentarians also emphasized the need to universally uphold human rights, expressing concern over the global backlash against agendas on sexual and reproductive health and rights. The matter of the disproportionate impact of the climate crisis on vulnerable populations, particularly women and girls, was also discussed. Mr. Speaker, the parliamentarians pledged that moving forward, they would work towards people-centered policies, data-driven solutions, and harness digital technology to strengthen health systems and ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health services. The parliamentarians also committed to advocating for increased funding for sexual and reproductive health and rights programs and international development assistance in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, aiming to shape a resilient and inclusive post-2030 agenda. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the conference reaffirmed parliamentarians' commitment to advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender equality, and sustainable development globally, recognizing the interconnectedness of these goals in shaping a resilient and equitable future for all. I thank you.
Senator Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Statement on issue of general topical concern on the outstanding performance of our athletes at the Boston Marathon yesterday, Monday. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 52.1 to make a statement on issue of general topical concern and national importance, namely the outstanding performance of our athletes at the Boston Marathon held on Monday, 15 April 2024. That is yesterday, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, once again, our athletes have brought immense pride to our country, giving us by the outstanding performance at the Boston Marathon. Our female athletes dominated the event, securing all top positions on the podium, while their male counterparts also demonstrated exceptional prowess. Our athletes displayed extraordinary resilience to emerge victorious in the fierce competition marathon. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the women's marathon, Ellen Obiri led the podium sweep by clocking 2 hours, 22 minutes and 37 seconds. Followed closely, I would have expected applaud for all the women in there, followed closely by Sharon Lokedi in under 2 hours, 22 minutes and 45 seconds. And of course, our very own, she is almost 45 years old, Mr. Speaker, sir, a mother and a model, Edna Kiplagat, secured third position with a time of 2 hours, 23 minutes and 21 seconds. In the men's marathon, Evans Chebet, a two-time defending champion, claimed the third place with a time 7 minutes and 22 seconds, Mr. Speaker, sir. In a race won by Ethiopia's Sisei Lema with a time of 2 hours, 6 minutes and 17, Mr. Speaker, if Kelvin Kiptum, may his soul rest in peace, he would have won this marathon under 2 hours. While John Korir and Albert Korir, both representing Kenya, achieved 4th and 5th position respectively, I extend on behalf of this House our warmest congratulations. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I continue to urge this esteemed House to accord our athletes, sportsmen and women a chance to address the Senate, and I think the majority leader and minority leader have made a voice on this. Such an opportunity would demonstrate our appreciation for their remarkable achievements in the international stage by flying our flag high always and also motivating them to continue bringing honor to our nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, furthermore, I call upon the Ministry of Sports, Athletics Kenya, and National Olympics Committee of Kenya, NOC, in collaboration with Beijing Sports Competition and International Sports Exchange Center, to provide a comprehensive update on the investigation into concerning an incident during the Beijing half marathon. In this incident, it involved our athletes ushering a Chinese marathoner to win a race. And people are making comments that maybe Kenyans are starting to pay the loan by allowing them to win. This, among other issues, Mr. Speaker, sir, such as doping, fixing athletics and sports, tarnish our nation's repute internationally and undermine the principles of fair play and transparency in sportsmanship and kills the spirit of competition. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I urge our athletes, sportsmen and women, when they are winning, they should win. When they are losing, they should lose, Mr. Speaker. And what we saw in Beijing half marathon is very unfortunate, where they were supposed to win the 3, but because they wanted a Chinese to win the race, they retreated back. And I think, Mr. Speaker, we must have a comprehensive report on the same. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, through you, I ask the Labour Committee led by my brother, Senator Reverend Julius Murkomen, the Senator of West Pokot, Chairman, to look into this issue and update the House. I also plead with the Anti-Doping Agency to intensify its efforts to root out unscrupulous agents and coaches who engage in doping and match fixing, therefore jeopardizing the careers of our sportsmen and women and the reputation of our Kenyan sports. I wish to congratulate and call upon, Mr. Speaker, the Athletics Kenya, the sports, that is the sports of Kenya, that is Football Federation of Kenya, and other sports federation, Mr. Speaker, in this spirit, to hold election as directed by the courts, Mr. Speaker, and ensure regular elections to allow efficiency in running this, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I think that is important. I wish to congratulate our athletes for their exceptional performance at the Boston Marathon and other major marathons and competition. I wish them well as they prepare to represent our nation at the upcoming Olympics in Paris, France, and assure them of our unwavering commitment and support and advocating for their welfare and win us more goals. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Chute. The statement is dropped. Senator Mundigi. That statement is dropped. Senator Siango. That statement is dropped. Senator Ledama Olekina. That statement is dropped. Next order, clerk. Now, honorable senators, we'll allow 15 minutes for intervention on the statements that have been sought. We'll start with the Honorable Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to make two observations on the statement as read by the Chairman of Education. Mr. Speaker, the first comment is on the issue of the TSC and the payment of hardship allowance to teachers in Kilifi and Taita Taveta counties. The Speaker, I just want to draw the attention of the committee to the fact that this problem is a lot more widespread than just in Kilifi and in Taita Taveta. And the Speaker, you can restrain Senator Cherargei, is distracting the chair. So, Mr. Speaker, this matter is a lot more widespread than would be found in Kilifi and Taita Taveta. I do believe that a lot of senators seated in this chamber today have the same problem with TSC. I know there is a big problem with TSC in Laikipia, that I know for a fact, on the discrimination on which teachers should earn hardship allowance and which teachers should not. So, Speaker, I have a big problem in Kitui County, and I know the same could be said by a lot of other senators here. Mr. Speaker, the committee should find time and reason to interrogate the synergy, if it does exist, between government ministries, state departments, and independent constitutional commissions. Why do I say this? I say this, Mr. Speaker, because this House has passed resolutions on 33 counties that have wards which have been declared as marginalized. I'll give the example of Kitui County. In Kitui County, we have 17 wards that have been declared as marginalized by CRA, and the House has passed that declaration. Mr. Speaker, you will find that in those 17 wards, then it should follow automatically that teachers in those wards that are marginalized should benefit from hardship allowances. But what will happen is that in those wards, you will realize there are teachers there who are not benefiting from hardship allowance. The Speaker.
What is your point of order, Senator Kinyua?
Mr. Speaker, I want to concur with what Senator Wambua is saying, but the only thing I want to ask, Mr. Speaker, for purpose of clarity.
What is your point of order?
Yes.
And start by quoting the standing order.
Yes. 105. We are talking about, I'm asking whether he's talking about wards or sub-location, Mr. Speaker, because CRA was very clear it was locations, not wards.
So is that a point of information or? Proceed, Senator.
I'll proceed, Mr. Speaker. Those sub-locations are found in wards. my good friend. And I'm very sure the chair understands what I'm talking about. So that synergy needs to be established so that one arm of government is not conferring a benefit to employees in their department, and another arm of government is stripping employees of benefits from the same region. The second issue on that statement is the issue of the ECD scheme of service. The Speaker, that is a matter that this House must now pronounce itself on, and pronounce itself very, very loudly. The Speaker, the scheme of service for ECD teachers, a resolution was passed in this House that there is a standard scheme of service that should be rolled out by all the counties, so that you don't have one county that is paying ECD teachers 10,000 shillings a month through M-Pesa, and there is another county that is paying ECD teachers 50,000 shillings through a payroll system. The Speaker, the scheme of service for ECD teachers is not something that will be implemented at the whim of a sitting governor. If we don't have that synergy, if we don't have that clarity, Mr. Speaker, what will happen is that there is a reason why ECD is a devolved function. It is so that then children have a strong base on education right from childhood. If we don't have a scheme of service for teachers in ECD classrooms running across all the counties, there will be serious discrimination. As a Speaker, the purposes for devolving ECD then will be beaten. So the committee, I would ask the Speaker that we must find a way of ensuring that the ECD scheme of service is rolled out uniformly across the counties. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Mungatana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to make a comment on the statement by the Honorable Cherargei. Mr. Speaker, I was coming from my house, and I then watched the TV, and there is a section where they bring trending news, what Kenyans have been saying. And Mr. Speaker, the focus was on what happened during that marathon, in which, Mr. Speaker, of all countries, a Chinese beats Kenya. Mr. Speaker, it didn't make any sense to me. A Chinese beating Kenya. How on earth, Mr. Speaker, does that happen? And Mr. Speaker, when I listened to the conversation, Mr. Speaker, it emerged that Kenyans were making very serious observations, including the fact that there was, in the past, match fixing. Now it is emerging a new trend, race fixing. And Mr. Speaker, the country's integrity was being discussed online, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what the Honorable Senator Cherargei has said today, that investigations must be carried. I want to use the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, to say that Kenya has obtained a special space in Africa, where I sit, Mr. Speaker, in Pan-African Parliament. Every time people expect us to be athletic, even, Mr. Speaker, when they look at me, I am a disappointment because I don't look as tall and as athletic as I should. But they have this image of how a Kenyan should be. So, Mr. Speaker, we have obtained a special place in the continent and in the world because of how we have projected athletics in Kenya and the medals we have won. So, Mr. Speaker, we are jeopardizing the good name of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, some of the reasons that were being given is that, oh, this Chinese is my friend, so I was letting him to pass. Mr. Speaker, we have discussed here and said they will be given some incentives, tax-free something when they come home. We will honor these athletes. Why on earth would someone sell the good name of our country because of, these are the Judas Iscariots, Mr. Speaker, who sold the Lord Jesus Christ for pieces of silver. Mr. Speaker, they are selling this country for pieces of silver. And it is very serious, Mr. Speaker. So we want this investigation in support of this statement, Mr. Speaker, not just to be carried out in a casual manner. There should be serious investigation by Athletics Kenya, and they should involve state agencies that are competent in that area so that we can take the blame to where it belongs, and the people who are involved in this scam, Mr. Speaker, they must be punished, because we cannot sacrifice the name of our country because some people want to get a few pieces of silver. Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Senator Muma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak. Allow me to contribute to the statement by Senator Gloria Orwoba. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Millie Odhiambo and myself also attended the ICPD, that is the International Conference on Population and Development, that was held in Oslo, courtesy of a parliamentary caucus, the East and Southern Africa Parliamentary Caucus. That is a caucus of members of parliament who have an interest in addressing matters relating to sexual reproductive health issues. In addition to what Senator Gloria has provided or presented to the House, I wish to indicate that I will share a copy of a declaration that was made on the last day of this conference. Mr. Speaker, one issue that I would want to highlight in this matter is an issue we discussed as parliamentarians from Eastern and Southern Africa. We discussed the issue of discussing prostate cancer as one of the sexual reproductive issues that is becoming problematic in our region. Mr. Speaker, I would want to raise this issue and to call to the attention of all our members that matters relating to sexual reproductive health affect families and actually affect development in this country. I wish to ask that both male and female members of parliament and senators should take greater interest in this issue. If you read the Kenyan Health Demographic Survey, you'll find very disturbing statistics, including very high teen pregnancies, girls dropping out of school, young men actually having fertility problems because they are not able to access proper sexual reproductive health services, including the most important, which is comprehensive sex education that would be able to avert a number of the things that are happening. I raise this to ask that the matter of sexual reproductive health be treated as very crucial to this country and not be treated as an issue for women and an issue that should be relegated to the back of any discussion. So I'm calling on all of us, and I will table the declaration that we had, that beyond that declaration, let us take an interest in matters relating to sexual reproductive health in Kenya and see how we can help our young men, our young women, and particularly adolescent girls who are becoming casualties because we are not putting in place the necessary policies and laws to support them. I support Mr. Speaker.
Senator Aaron, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to join my colleagues' views on various statements that have been shared. I'm particularly curious about the statement by Senator Samson Cherargei. I join him in congratulating our athletes who did extremely well in keeping up with our tradition, Mr. Speaker, as a powerhouse in athletics, ensuring, and I know the members of parliament from Uganda are still in the house, Madam Speaker. Uganda has been threatening to take this mantle from us, but we are one people, so it's not a big concern to us, Mr. Speaker. But I congratulate Madam Helen Obiri for a stellar performance, Mr. Speaker, in Boston, winning the title, Mr. Speaker, alongside the Edna Kiplagat and the lady who finished second, whose name skips my mind, Mr. Speaker. Sharon, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I am also concerned, just like Senator Mungatana, on that incident in China. But as a sportsman, I know that anything is possible in sports. Therefore, I don't agree with his sentiments, Mr. Speaker, that how can a Chinese beat Kenyans? If Aston Villa can beat Arsenal immediately after Liverpool has lost, when you're supposed to be gunning for the title, then even a Chinese can beat a Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. Nothing is impossible in sports, Madam Speaker. Therefore, Senator Mungatana, many odd things happen in sports many times. Therefore, it's not necessarily the case that those Kenyans that were defeated by the Chinese, Mr. Speaker, might have been compromised. But it will be important, just for the record, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, that the race organizers updates the world, because everybody is concerned whether this was genuine, because it appeared to me from the final sprints of that particular race, Madam Speaker, as if these were the pace setters, Madam Speaker. But it is for the race organizers to let us as a country and the world of sports to know what really happened. Finally, Madam Speaker, is to agree with Senator Cherargei that we need elections in athletics Kenya as soon as yesterday, the same way the courts directed, Madam Speaker. Kenya is preparing to participate in the 2024 Paris Olympics, Madam Speaker. And there is a whole lot of confusion. And I'd wish that the Minister for Sports, C.S. Ababu, can come out a bit more clear with a roadmap, having a meeting with all these stakeholders, together with the athletes, the officials, sit down and agree on the way forward, Madam Speaker, because sports cannot be relegated to be just another industry that is performing dismally as we watch. I know we have a similar problem that is looming, Madam Speaker, in our football, because there are supposed to be FKF elections. The courts have denied FKF from holding an AGM because there are disagreements amongst the membership. We want to tell CS Ababu Namwamba to take the lead in resolving the issues around athletics and sports, because these are extremely important industries that provide employment opportunities to many of our young people, Madam Speaker, who are able to ply their trade by either playing football, Madam Speaker, or running in the various capitals of the world. Therefore, it is my humble request to the Minister to be more vocal, be at the center of this conversation, Mr. Speaker, and update the country so that we are settled and we know that there is a plan, and our athletes and sportsmen, Mr. Speaker, in football, in rugby, in athletics, Mr. Speaker, are not going to waste their talent due to wrangles in the various unions, Madam Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Majority Leader. Apparently, the time for comments on statements has lapsed, but I'll add in just maybe 2 or 3. Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. Allow me to speak on the 2 statements. One, the statement by the Chair of Education, and 2, the statement by the Chair of Devolution. I want to echo the sentiments made by the Senator for Kitui, Senator Wambua, on the ECD. Madam Speaker, if there is one thing that I would encourage the Education Committee to handle, is the issue of ECD. I think Senator Wambua has rightly put it, that this House passed a resolution to have a uniform ECD scheme of service, but that is not implemented because different counties have different schemes of service. Madam Speaker, as we are speaking now, in my county, the ECD teachers have been on strike for close to 2 months now, and the issue is in court. Nothing seems to be happening, and looks like the governor and his executive, they are unable to resolve this problem. I think the Senate has to stamp its authority and insist that we need to have a uniform scheme of service for the ECD teachers, and also resolve issues around ECD teachers in our counties. Madam Speaker, the second issue is on devolution. I am so impressed that the Committee of Devolution went to Trans Nzoia and resolved the challenge we are having between the governor of Trans Nzoia and the deputy governor. I think the same spirit must be escalated to all other counties which are facing similar challenges, and there are many. So the Committee of Devolution, I think you are like the front end of the Senate. It is a committee that handles cross-cutting issues for all other committees. And I think when we hear that they are addressing current issues, I think that's the pride of this Senate. But we have other issues, Madam Speaker, which I think the Committee of Devolution can help this House. Mr. Speaker, we were so shocked that a member of this House was attacked by goons hired by a governor in the process of doing his job. That is Senator Okiya Omtata of Busia. Those are things that we don't want to hear. And I want to encourage Senator Bass, who is the chair of Devolution Committee, to pick up on such issues, because this House exists to protect devolution under Article 96 of the Constitution. If we have a scenario where we are either attacked or stopped from doing our job using politics or using goons or scaring us, Mr. Speaker, then we have a problem with devolution in this country. So I want to encourage the Committee of Devolution to do more than they are doing. Mr. Speaker, as we are speaking now, most of our counties have not received their disbursement, January, February, and March. And you know, this late disbursement of money to our counties also brings other issues, including corruption. So we want to encourage the Committee of Devolution, working closely with the Committee of Finance, to find a permanent remedy to this problem. Because we don't want to be told that employees in counties have not been paid, or governors have had to go to the banks to get very expensive loans to pay salaries. Those are things which derail devolution in this country. And I want to encourage the committee to look at real issues affecting devolution in this country and address. Mr. Speaker, there is also a statement by Senator Ugenda on health. Mr. Speaker, this is one area that requires a lot of focus by this House.
You have continuously referred to me as Mr. Speaker.
Sorry.
Please note the change of the chair.
Madam Speaker, you know, we had Senator Speaker Kingi there, so that is still in our mind. Even Majority Leader also did the same thing. So I'm sorry for that. I wanted to say that the health issues in this country, we have done so well as a Senate on matters of agriculture, fake fertilizer. I want to thank the Committee for Agriculture for coming out very strongly in dealing with that problem. But Mr. Speaker, the Senate is nowhere on matters of doctor strike. And yet health is a devolved function. So I want to encourage the Committee for Health, led by Governor Senator Mandago, to wake up and take the lead on the matter of doctor strike in this country. Where is Senate? At least we are seeing National Assembly, but health is devolved largely. So I want to encourage my co-chair, Senator Mandago, and the committee members, including Senator Hamida, who is sitting next to me, very strong member of the Health Committee, to take the lead and help in resolving the current problem of the doctor strike. Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Senator Chiradike Samson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. And it's good to see you safe and sound. I saw yesterday what was happening in Murang'a, and I was worried about. I hope the office should provide necessary and add more security to you, but I'm happy it was your home in Kigumo. Madam Speaker, many people saw the fracas more than what you contributed for those women. which is more than 5 million, and we congratulate you for organizing. I just want to appeal you to bring peace in Murang'a. Murang'a is one of our best and most loyal counties to Kenya Kwanza administration. So we are keen in what happens, but in future, invite some of us who are tacticians when it comes to such issues, and we'll ensure you are well protected, Madam Speaker. And thank you for doing a good job alongside other leaders, Madam Speaker, and I know you know where the fire is at the moment. Madam Speaker, I just want to make a few comments. One is on the report by the chair, who coincidentally happens to be your senator, Senator New too, on the issue of, I didn't hear something about the teachers' promotion by TSC. We know there was hue and cry, Madam Speaker, where the promotion appeared skewed and disfavored to most of the teachers, Madam Speaker. The interviews were done, promotions were done, but the teachers feel that there was insufficiency in terms of taking in of their interests, Madam Speaker. So I want to ask the committee, and just the way the Agriculture Committee has been proactive on the issue of fertilizer, Madam Speaker, and I'm happy, courtesy of your office, I was able to host them on Tuesday last week. We need also Education Committee to be proactive, to tell the country how many teachers were promoted, what was the criteria, what basis, what is demography, is it across the entire nation, Madam Speaker? Because as per Article 10 on national values and principles of good governance, we must see regional balance. We must balance in terms of promotion, Madam Speaker, and ensure it becomes career progression, Madam Speaker. You know, when you are working for a particular profession and there is no career progress, Madam Speaker, it is unfair. So I want to call upon and ask the TSC also to be transparent and to be fair. And I'm happy I'm seeing a number of committee members of education led by the chair, Madam Speaker. Let TSC be honest. Who did they promote? What was the criteria? What did they do it, Madam Speaker? Secondly, Madam Speaker, is on ECD. I remember in the last session, and a number of us are lucky to be here, we had dispensed of the issue of ECD. We want a standardized scheme of service. For example, my ECD teachers in Nandi County are preparing to go on a strike, because apparently there has been no harmonization in terms of schemes of service. And you know, ECD teachers play a unique role, Madam Speaker. These are the people, when your child just starts works, they don't only teach our children learning, but they also teach them manners. They also assist them in using even toilet facilities, how to be clean, how to tuck in. You can imagine a county, one county is paying 10,000 shillings, another is paying 20,000. We must have an harmonized ECD standard scheme of service, Madam Speaker, so that as a country we can be proud of our ECD teachers. And I think the Education Committee, I agree, but they are taking long. I want to ask them to fast track and give us the status of ECD status implementation in terms of that is going on across the country, Madam Speaker. And therefore, please, the ECD teachers, and then if the Education Committee, in conclusion, Madam Speaker, feel that we need a national legislation. As a Senate and National Assembly and a Parliament, we are ready to do a national legislation that will bring a standardized scheme of service. But we are not trying to encroach on the role that we have in terms of ECD being devolved. And that is why I had my brother, my neighbor, Senator Godfrey Otsotsi, and I want him to advise his colleagues of coalition, because they have been blaming government, national government, for doctor strike. I'm happy what he said, health being devolved, he should be saying it on Sundays and in funeral services, Madam Speaker, so that we are fair in this country. I would in fact request him to go. I can facilitate and organize him to do a press conference after this at the media center and tell the nation, even that we are like Madam Speaker, and tell the nation health is devolved. And teachers, doctors, Madam Speaker, must be told, because Madam Speaker...
Would you like to be informed by your colleague, Senator Otsotsi?
No, he will misinform and mislead me in equal measure, Madam Speaker. Because what I'm saying, I wish, and I saw the leader of minority in the lower house blaming the president and national government. Yet the coalition members are senators here. They should be informing the likes of Opio and I and the rest of the brigade in the minority side in the lower house that health is devolved. Where is the voice of governors, Madam Speaker? Why is it when we are doing division of revenue for health, governors are very comfortable, they complain and they shout the loudest, but when it comes to strike of health workers, you don't see governors. Madam Speaker. And I'm disappointed by the Health Committee, and I'm happy Senator Amida Kibwana is here, my very good friend, and I thank her, and alongside Senator Richard Onyonga and many members who attended our breakfast meeting of open governance in the morning at Sarova Stanley, that they should have taken an initiative, Madam Speaker, and even address as a Senate, this is a devolved function. Madam Speaker, and I'm asking the country. Me, I was a pupillage, and with a lot of respect to my pupil master, Madam Sarah Karuga, I was never paid even a penny. But doctors who are interns, who are not yet qualified doctors, are paid 70,000, Madam Speaker. Yet you as a lawyer, senior lawyer in this country, and SG Emeritus of the ruling party, you are never paid as a pupillage. Madam Speaker, if we want to be fair, there is a saying that all animals are equal, but the others who are more equal than the others, Madam Speaker. So if we have to pay interns, doctors, 70,000 or 200,000, we must pay in other professionals. Engineers, doctors, even pastors and clergy and priests who are still training to be doctors, Madam Speaker, they must be paid also, so that we are fair in this country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and that is why I'm saying, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, I know we are pressed for time. The issue of doctors' strike is a devolved function. In fact, what President is doing is offering a service, is just being a gentleman. But the people who should address the issue of doctors is Council of Governors, Madam Speaker. Why are they cowing and hiding now? But when it comes to sharing, they will say, and that is why, Madam Speaker, some of the people are proposing that health be reversed to the national government, Madam Speaker. And therefore, with those very many remarks, Madam Speaker, I thank you, and I support these comments, Madam Speaker.
Senator Osotsi.
I rise on standing order number 105 on statement of fact. Madam Speaker, Senator Cherargei,
You know,
who
if
has
it's on
led-
Senator Cherargei, he's already retired his arguments and resuming his
I had
seat.
blessed my
So it's overtaken.
Point of
You
order
take
earlier.
him up at another opportunity. Because now he's already resumed his seat. You'll have another chance maybe when he goes
Can
off
I
again.
inform him?
No, he does not want to be informed. He must be on the floor. Senator Gloria Orwoba will be the last person to speak on this. Very few minutes, Senator, and we move to the next one.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for considering giving me this opportunity. I want to support the Senator Cherargei's statement on the performance of our athletes. Madam Speaker, first of all, let me just say that I was very impressed, and I think this is a clear indication that when we are pushing for affirmative action, you can see some of the results, even in the field of athletics. You've seen how our girls performed, and you know some people might not really understand when we celebrate Helen Obiri's win. Because if you look at the time that she used for that marathon, 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 37 seconds, I wonder how long Senator Cherargei can take to run that marathon, so that we put it in perspective, Madam Speaker. She did an excellent job, and together with Sharon and Edna, I would like to congratulate them. Madam Speaker, there is a very important message in this statement for Senator Cherargei in terms of calling on Athletics Kenya to investigate and ensure that we don't have unscrupulous agents in that industry. Madam Speaker, what we witnessed, and I thank you, Senator Danson Mungatana, for actually clarifying that. What we witnessed is what we call match fixing. Because there's absolutely no way, based on what I saw with my own two eyes, that those Chinese athletes beat the Kenyans. There's no way. That was match fixing outright. And Madam Speaker, you know, we know that the economic times are hard, even for the Chinese and for the Kenyans. But we should not allow this kind of corruption into the field of athletics. Because match fixing, obviously we know that someone was sat down and told, you know, just agree not to win, and then we are going to pay you some money. And so the investigation needs to be done. Because if this continues, you are going to see our athletes ensuring that they win the first match to show their powers or whatever, and then they go on the back door and start negotiating with Chinese on how they are going to, you know, allow them to win a marathon. So, Madam Speaker, I think if the Minister for Sports, Honorable Ababu Namwambu, is listening, The call is very clear that there is some very shoddy business going on behind the scenes, and he needs to literally act on it before it is devolved down to our training centers in the grassroots on the county levels. Because, Madam Speaker, we know, and not to be discriminative, that these Chinese, they are very industrious. We could be here talking about it, and there's a whole operation going on in Nandi, where Senator Cherargei comes from. So, Madam Speaker, congratulations to the girls, and again, I want to say that the issue of unscrupulous agents has to be dealt with, and match fixing needs to be talked about and to be dealt with from the top. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Senators. That's the end of the statement hour and the debate on the statements. I will now reorder the order paper. I'll reorganize the order paper, and I will call order number 17.
Order number 17, the National Rating Bill, National Assembly Bills number 55 of 2022, second reading.
Majority Leader.
Not yet. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the National Rating Bill, Senate Bill number 55 of 2022, be now read a second time. Madam Speaker, this is a very important piece of legislation. Amongst the many that we have considered as a House, this one particularly, Madam Speaker, apart from the annual division of revenue bill, where we send funds and dividing of revenue horizontally, Madam Speaker, between the national and the county governments. This is one of those bills, Madam Speaker, that seeks to add more into the pot of our counties, Madam Speaker, so that they may be able to deliver services to the people of Kenya. Madam Speaker, the National Rating Bill was published in the Kenya Gazette Supplement number 185 of 2022 and passed by the National Assembly on 11th of October 2023. Thereafter, the bill was referred to the Senate for consideration. The principal object, Madam Speaker, of this particular bill is basically just to provide a legislative framework for the imposition of property taxes on land and buildings by county governments pursuant to Article number 209(3)(a) of the Constitution. You know, Madam Speaker, many times this House has discussed, and I have seen senators, some of you have not raised this issue, where you find in your county, your governor posts a big billboard in Nyamira town and says, I have given people free penalty waiver, I have made land rates are free, and those kind of things. Just trying to do what you'd consider ordinarily to be populist politics, Mr. Speaker, without knowing that they are actually denying revenue, Madam Speaker, that would have been used to develop our counties, Madam Speaker. And it is for absence of a national legislation that guides how this process is done, Madam Speaker, for our counties actually to build and back up their own revenue sources. Therefore, this is one such opportunity for our county governments, Madam Speaker, to think through this. So it provides a buoyant source of revenue for county governments. The revenue is necessary, of course, to enable each county government to perform their functions as assigned by the county governments. Each of our county governments, Senator Mungatana, all senators actually that you can think of, I don't know of a county government that meets its own source revenue targets. Yet, if as a House, we do not take deliberate space and time to ensure that we guide our county governments by providing national legislation that will guide how this exercise is done across a county. We have tried it for 3 terms of the county governments, 2013 to 2017, 2017 to 2022, and presently. If you leave it to the talents or lack of the same of our various county governments to find ways of raising on-source revenue, Madam Speaker, then we know what the results are. We know that there are very few counties have grown their own source revenue since the inception of devolution by an equation even similar to what the economic growth is. Many of them actually, Madam Speaker, to utter dismay of colleague senators and members of the public, have actually their source revenue sources dipping, despite the fact that people practice that applies across all the 47 counties. Don't leave it to your county governments alone, Madam Speaker. And that is a responsibility rating bill. It is my sincere hope that as a House we shall also reflect on what are the standards of collecting other forms of taxes on source revenue. Is there a way to standardize and ensure that there is legislation, such as the bill that is presently before the Finance and Budget Committee, of a unified system, Madam Speaker, of collecting these revenues, especially electronically, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you will recall that at the inception of this administration, when the president stuck to his guns and led the government in insisting that all government services must be paid via the e-citizen platform, there were all manner of hue and cry. But somehow, many of those noises have since disappeared. Either people have since learned that it is impossible to bully such an administration, or the Speaker, that is determined on doing the right thing, sometimes, though sometimes not very popular, but the right thing in the long run. Therefore, we must also begin that conversation in ensuring that every of the taxes that are being levied and paid for by our people in our county governments, so that it becomes impossible, Madam Speaker, for people to pilfer these resources, that they are paid electronically, so that there is a trace, and they are paid using a system that is accountable from reputable firms, not having systems, Madam Speaker, that has what is colloquially referred to by governors a T-junction. A T-junction, Madam Speaker, means that from the source where the citizen is paying to the bank account of the county revenue fund, there is a T somewhere where there is a leakage, and the governor of that particular county has a chance to leak something small out of it. We need reputable firms, Madam Speaker. That's why we are providing it in legislation, so that we will provide the standards upon which, what are these companies that can provide? Is it even possible to have one system that applies across a county, controlled by the county governments? There's a very lazy argument, Madam Speaker, that is being peddled, that, oh, that is a clawback on devolution. If you have a system that is applied across all the 47 counties, what is the problem? What citizens want is for them to pay their taxes and to see those taxes being used prudently in their counties. Nobody is saying that you propose a system where those resources will come to the what is it called? To the national government kitty, Madam Speaker. But we want it to be traceable, verifiable, a means through which citizens know if a poor old lady that is selling Esaga in Keumbu Market, where Senator Omogeni comes from, pays her 20 shillings, Madam Speaker, as the market rates for the day, then that 20 shillings goes to the coffers of Nyamira County government, and it translates as service for her, so that we just don't collect taxes from ordinary citizens, Madam Speaker, and because a good number of it has been pilfered, then there is no commensurate service for the same. How many towns, how many centers, Madam Speaker, do you know that there are people from the county governments, for example, who collect taxes, but if you go to that town, you can't find even a toilet, Madam Speaker. You can't find sanitation facilities. Yet the county governments continue to collect taxes on that particular market, Madam Speaker. Therefore, that is why as Senate we must take the lead in this conversation. If you rely it and leave it to the imagination of our county governments alone, Madam Speaker, then we will be abetting our responsibility as the House that is charged with the responsibility of giving out legislation that enhances and entrenches devolution. And this is one such legislation, Madam Speaker. Article 2095 of our Constitution confers on us as Parliament the powers to regulate the exercise of fiscal responsibility by county governments, which is what I was just speaking about a few minutes ago. It is important to understand, Madam Speaker, that the fourth schedule of the Constitution, that in the fourth schedule of the Constitution, counties are charged with numerous functions and responsibilities. The imposition of property taxes on lands and buildings by county governments will be essential for generating local revenue to fund critical public services, infrastructure and community development initiative. Above that, Madam Speaker, it also provides a fair and equitable means of taxation, ensuring that property owners contribute to the financing essential services in proportion to the value of their properties. Many strong institutions that have got the financial muscle are able actually to negotiate in colluding with land officers in the various counties, Madam Speaker, pay taxes less than what is due to them. Taxation must be fair, Madam Speaker. You must be taxed in an amount that is commensurate to the value of what you're holding and the benefit that you get from a county government, Madam Speaker. If you are charging a boda operator or a mamamboga, Madam Speaker, in a particular market, 20 or 50 shillings to operate in a particular market, then within the same market, somebody who has a wholesale or a supermarket, Madam Speaker, is simply being charged 500 shillings as license or 1,000 or whatever amount, Madam Speaker, for the entire financial year, then it brings to fore the conversation about equity. Is it fair? Is it just? This provides the opportunity for us as a country to have this conversation and say that taxation by our various forms and arms of county government, Madam Speaker, is fair and can be traced, Madam Speaker. We have challenges. Those of us that have come from counties that have multinationals operating within them, Madam Speaker, where you find for an acre of land, the tea multinational estates, for example, for those of us that come from the tea growing areas, many of them up to date, the land rates that they pay are valuations of as late as 1994, Madam Speaker, when I was a 6-year-old boy. I have come to the Senate right now, and they're still paying that particular amount because of absence of such a law. That is why this is very personal to some of us, and we need to quickly pass this legislation, Madam Speaker, so that there is a standardized format determined and passed nationally here in the national government so that counties are left to implement and collect the resources. And it's not left to the negotiations, Madam Speaker, because I know, for example, in the tea subsector, when we go to meetings with them, they say, oh, we have agreed with this county government, but we didn't agree with the other. We don't want these back-end agreements. We want agreements, Madam Speaker, that can be verified, that can be scrutinized, and that can easily be traced back, Madam Speaker. Part 7, Madam Speaker, as I move towards a conclusion, Part 7 to 20 of this bill, Madam Speaker, contains provisions of the duty to levy rates by county governments and the principles they need to adhere, Madam Speaker, in accordance to PFM. It defines actually who the owner is, the mandate and the requirements of ensuring that the rates are paid. Of course, it even provides for forms of rating, the notice of rating, ratings track, the notice of rate, payments and remissions, discounts, waivers, enforcement of payment of rates, and so on and so forth, Madam Speaker. Basically, this is the engine of this particular legislation, providing for all what I have described earlier above. Clause 21 to 25 of the bill, Madam Speaker, provides powers, an appointment and powers of valuers, which provides the criteria for one to be appointed as a valuer and give responsibilities to this valuer, Madam Speaker, so that the chief government valuer, with respect to standardization and harmonization and preparation and implementation of the valuation of roles across our various counties, so that it's standardized. I think I've spent significant time explaining and giving context why it is important for us to have this standardized across all the counties. It need not be different from Kisumu and Kericho and Mombasa and all these other places. The chief government valuer sets in consultation with the county governments, Madam Speaker, so that the valuation role is standardized, Madam Speaker. I have given an example that many counties, I know, for example, in my county, Senator Muma, as you drive towards Kericho town, all that land that you see and you admire and you take pictures from, the valuation role that is being used was last updated in 1994. That's why we are providing standardization of exercise so that we know what is the frequency of updating the master valuation roll with our various county government. Within what time should it be updated so that the same can be done. There are property owners, for example, in your county of Kisumu, who on one file you find that the valuation for this business owner last reads the value for 1990. And for the next one, just next door, they have their property because maybe they recently purchased it, therefore it has a more recent value of 2023. Is that fair? It's not fair. And that's why the important proposal to have this standardized. Clause 26 to 36 of the bills, Madam Speaker, contain provision on the valuation rating. This part gives the general basis of valuation, declaration of rateable areas, methods to be used for valuation, Madam Speaker, preparation and contents of valuation rolls, supplementary valuation together with the alteration. Publication of roll, the objections thereof and exceptions are provided for in part. Uncontested draft valuation roll and the draft supplementary valuation roll are also provided for in clause 35 of the bill. Very important, as I mentioned. Clause 37 to 53 contains the provisions of the National Rating Tribunal, Madam Speaker. This part seeks to establish a tribunal with part-time members. The jurisdiction of the tribunal is specified under clause 39. The part also provides for the conduct of proceedings, the quorum, declaration of disclosure of interest, powers of the tribunal, remuneration, staff tribunal, penalty of failure to comply with tribunal's lawful order, appeal mechanisms from the tribunal. Madam Speaker, basically, this is setting up of the tribunal that will listen to these disputes. However, I am a bit concerned with the issues of tribunals. And it's good, as I say this, Senior Counsel Omogeni is here, and very many other lawyers are here. The reason we set up tribunals in our law is that it is expected that there will be the first court of reporting when there is a dispute. However, there is an emerging practice where judges, either in the High Court or magistrates, are listening to matters that have not even originally been dealt with at tribunal level, be it at the sports dispute tribunal, Madam Speaker. Political parties are also complaining about this, that there are many matters that you find a judge making a determination of a matter that has not even been dispensed or discussed at a particular tribunal. Environmental tribunal, Madam Speaker, exists, and you find petitioners quickly rush to the High Court for one reason or the other, and a judge makes pronouncements on this particular issue. Then why do we set up tribunals? The reason why we set up all these tribunals, Madam Speaker, is that it is believed that these little courts have got the known expertise on that particular field better than any other individual outside that particular jurisdiction, that they can be able to dispense and listen to the issues that are being canvassed and make the proper determination. Therefore, this is an area of serious concern, and I hope that the Chief Justice, together with those that serve in JSC, need to consider and properly perhaps issue guidelines to members of judiciary on the various tribunals so that this particular tribunal that we are setting up does not suffer the fate like many of these tribunals that we have in the country that are often bypassed, Madam Speaker, by petitioners and who head to High Court and immediately get attention on their matters without first going through the set procedure. So Part 5, Madam Speaker, basically establishes the National Rating Tribunal that will hear and handle all those disputes. Part 6, Madam Speaker, of the bill are just miscellaneous provisions and notices of repeal of Cap 266 and 267, which is a guiding law, even as we speak today, on these matters of rating. And I don't know how old this particular law is, must be extremely old. Finally, Madam Speaker, Clause 56 of and 57 of the bill contains the proposed regulations and savings and transition of any written national and county laws relating to valuation, just to preserve. If there have been counties that have been diligent to set up their own national rating or county specific and valuation roles, Madam Speaker, then this bill actually proposes to save such and doesn't delete them. Therefore, with those very many remarks, I want to urge colleague senators to debate this bill and make critical addition and proposals on how to better it, because it is for the betterment of our county governments and to cure a challenge that is real and that all our 47 county governments continue to struggle with. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I beg to move and request the Senator for Tana River, Senator Danson Buya Mungatana, to second.
Senator Mungatana, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, may I take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to thank the majority leader, who is the mover of this bill, for very eloquently, in his usual style, explain this bill very well. And I know senators who are listening will agree with me that we are here in this bill to discuss about own source of revenue for the counties from where we come from. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, own source revenue has become a real big challenge, very big challenge, because many counties, including my county, we have not really had a law such as this that will allow proper access to funds from property taxes. Madam Speaker, even the more developed counties like Nairobi and Mombasa and Kisumu and Uasin Gishu, Madam Speaker, when you look at their collection of through the rating process, again, it is having a lot of challenge because the legal framework for collection, the standardization does not exist. And yet, Madam Speaker, property rating is one of the most fundamental ways and most reliable ways of making good the targets of on-source revenue. Madam Speaker, when we had the debate on the Finance Act, one of my relatives who lives in the US called me and told me, what is the big fuss about this? And as I was trying to explain, he told me, you know, in our state where we live, in one of the states in the US, we depend on property taxes to finance all our activities here. We are really focused on rating. That is what helps us to finance the activities within our own state. So they could not relate why we were having a big fight about the finance bill in this place. So this brings to fore, Madam Speaker, the question of rating, the question of on-source revenues for our counties. Madam Speaker, in our county, we are, I think, the third lowest when it comes to collection of on-source revenue, because we depend on, despite the fact that we have a very large area, landmass in Tana River County, we have not been able to benefit from rating that land, Madam Speaker. What we depend on, Madam Speaker, it is what you will collect from, auctions from goats, from, cows, from camels. Madam Speaker, very little revenue. And then they go to the markets also, very little revenue. Madam Speaker, the county government also becomes very rough sometimes, even before they have passed their own Finance Act. They go to bar owners, to shop owners within trading centers, and they tell them now this has increased, like they were doing in our headquarters in Hola. They tell the traders and the business people that we have increased the rates even before the Finance Act came into being, into effect. They then tell you if you are not paying, they are accompanied by the kanjo, and they actually put a padlock on your business premise. Madam Speaker, this practice shows the desperation and the problems of raising on-source revenue in my county, Tana River County. Madam Speaker, the answer to these problems is to increase the base upon which we can raise on-source revenue. And this act, the Rating Act that we are bringing, that standardizes how we shall collect charges from properties across the entire 47 counties, is going to be a great help to a county such as Tana River County. The reason I support this bill very much is because we don't need then to increase the taxes or the charges or the levies that is upon the businessman who is selling in his kiosk, who is selling in his bar, who is selling in his little supermarket. What Tana River County will now be doing, Madam Speaker, is to benefit from this act if we pass it into law, where the huge landmass is going to be rateable. And those huge investors who we welcome to our county will have a predictable rate at which they will be paying their levies every year when it is due for payment. Madam Speaker, we have huge irrigation schemes in Tana River County. Do they pay to the county government anything? No. Madam Speaker, we have huge programs that are coming, investors, private investors, Madam Speaker, who are supposed to be bringing investment, yes, and we welcome them, but who are also supposed to make a contribution to the county government. Are they paying? No, Madam Speaker. Why? Because the legal framework does not exist. Today, when we pass this Rating Act, Madam Speaker, we shall create a larger base for the counties, not just Tana River, but the rest of the counties in this nation, who will be able now to collect in an organized manner, in a structured manner. They will be able to collect the levies that are due, and they will increase the base. Madam Speaker, we know that there is a very serious problem of leakage of what county government collect. And we know, Madam Speaker, that even the little that they are collecting, like what the Honorable Majority Leader has said, there is something called the T-junction. When they collect the resource for the charges from the traders, instead of that money coming directly to their accounts, the county revenue fund, there is a T-junction created there where illegal charges, the juice is sapped in little amounts. So people then become very wealthy. You cannot explain how they are wealthy because they don't have a business, they don't have a factory, they are not trading, they are not even registered anywhere. And Madam Speaker, you see, they're having all this money to splash around. Why? Because they are stealing from the T-junction. So, Madam Speaker, even as we discuss this rating bill, we must empower within the same act, and I think we should be creative enough to create a mechanism within that legal framework that will force this money that will be collected through rating to come directly into the county revenue fund. Madam Speaker, we have technology now in this time and age that we live in. We should not leave it to county revenue officers to be coming to properties of people or to go to those large investors in Tana River County or any other county to go and try and collect cash or to go with papers, writing papers, and then they give one type of paper, they say this is the correct one, and then the fake one is the one they present. So the money that is paid is not the money that reaches the county revenue fund. And then you see, when it was a county council, more money was being collected. Now it's a county government, less money is being collected. Madam Speaker, I believe that senators here will apply their minds so that we create a system when we are collecting the funds will go directly to the county revenue funds. We shall create a system using technology that will make sure that the money goes directly where it's supposed to be. In this way, Madam Speaker, the hope in this law is to create a legal framework that will ensure counties like us, where we have huge pieces of land, where we have investors who are coming, some of them are government bodies, some are private bodies, they will be able now, in a very predictable manner, they know this is the amount, this is the law, and they don't need to talk to anyone. They pay electronically when it is due. They don't need favors from the governors. They don't need favors from the CEC Finance or the county revenue officers. They will just be dealing direct, Madam Speaker, with the county revenue fund, so that when the time comes, they know how to pay. Madam Speaker, this creation within this act, this framework, must have within it the aspect of technology when it comes to collection. We should not just leave it a bit hanging there. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, this law is a very good law for our counties. And from my perspective, where we come from, Madam Speaker, especially because we have massive land, little population, and then we have people who have come to invest in those lands, and they are not paying rates. Madam Speaker, this Rating Act will enable the county government to collect enough so that then the charges that they impose using the Finance Act on the local mwananchi in the small towns, they can be reduced to a very small contribution so that those big investors can benefit our county. Madam Speaker, my other point in this, in seconding this bill, Madam Speaker, when we are here looking for ways and means to make our counties function effectively, we have saboteurs within the county government systems, Madam Speaker, whose sole purpose, they seek election, some of them are appointed leaders, whose sole purpose, Madam Speaker, is to milk the monies that come into their hands or through their hands. Madam Speaker, I am so disappointed because our own county, the county of Tana River, Madam Speaker, was listed in the accounts ending, in the year ending June 2023 as one of the counties that have a very adverse opinion from the Auditor General, Nancy Gathungu. Madam Speaker, when you see a county such as ours committing 450 million to pay legal fees, Madam Speaker, and you know the on-source revenue is so little, but they are paying 450 million legal fees, there is no accountability in those fees, Madam Speaker. There is no documentation according to the Auditor General. And Madam Speaker, people are just still walking around. Madam Speaker, when the Auditor General says there's 22 million that was paid for roads that when they went, they did not see. Therefore, there was loss of value for the money that was brought to Tana River County. Madam Speaker, contractors are still walking free. They are known. County government officers who participated in that crime, they are walking free. They are known. And nothing is happening to them. Madam Speaker, when you hear there is 100 million that was unaccounted for in the year ending June 2023 for travel, local travel. And Madam Speaker, documentation is missing. People justification for those travels are missing. Madam Speaker, even when we bring this Rating Act, this new mechanism for extending the on-source revenue into our counties, what is it that we will put in this act, Madam Speaker, that will make sure those thieves, those pilferers, will not walk straight? Madam Speaker, there was once a an ambassador here in Kenya from the US who said they steal and they vomit on our shoes, Madam Speaker. It is that kind of ugliness that we see in some of our counties. Documented, Madam Speaker. And the other day, Madam Speaker, the same government reports are saying 33 accounts are being operated in Tana River County and they cannot be explained. And then people are just walking, driving nice cars, having nice houses. Madam Speaker, we need as a Senate to start taking very serious actions against some of these officers in the counties. Even as we pass this, even as we make efforts to increase our rating, in this rating act, to increase our ability for the counties to collect, Madam Speaker, it will be a failure on our part if we don't also put mechanisms that are deterrent for those who will think that this is yet another opportunity, it's another revenue stream that we have created for them in the county for them to collect funds. So, Madam Speaker, I pray, even as I second this bill, that we put in a thought, not just in creating a technology system that will protect the funds, but also, Madam Speaker, create deterrent method, deterrent punishments that will make those people who are involved in criminal activity not to imagine that our Senate has passed for us another eating line. Madam Speaker, we should create in this law a very serious deterrent punishment for those who will find it another opportunity to dip their hands on the county's funds. Madam Speaker, with all those many remarks, I beg to second this bill, and I would pray that senators who are listening to me and those who will have opportunities to read this act, Madam Speaker, we shall bring necessary amendments to make it better, and those who have even better ideas will better this law, but we must make sure that we pass it as soon as possible. Madam Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to second. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the National Rating Bill, National Assembly Bills number 55 of 2022 be now read a second time. It's now time to engage in a debate on this bill. I invite Senator Mogeni Eric Okongo to commence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to also make my input to this bill. First, Madam Speaker, I want to go on record as in principle supporting this bill, and we need to give comfort to Kenyans that we are not introducing new taxation measures. We are just putting in place a mechanism to ensure that there is equity and fairness in collection of land rates from Kenyans. Madam Speaker, I also want to join my two colleagues who this afternoon have kind of written the Book of Lamentations because of the corruption, the wastage, the stealing of public money that is happening in our counties. And Madam Speaker, I'm no exemption, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as Senator Mngatana has put it, unless we are putting in place mechanisms to ensure that this money that will be collected will not form another stream for governors to steal, governors will start celebrating as soon as this money hits their accounts. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I'm speaking here with having the honors of coming from the account that has been rated by Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission as the one that is leading in corruption in the country. So shameful, Madam Speaker. A county that has produced distinguished Kenyans, including retired Chief Justice of the Republic. The control of budget comes from Nyamira, but we have that distinction of being rated as a leading county in corruption. So unless, Madam Speaker, we put in place mechanisms that will ensure that this money is used for the benefit of the locals, Senator Cheruiyot, this will just be another way of creating an efficient way of making easy money available for governors. I will pray that the committee that will retreat to go further into the details, we look at mechanisms of ensuring it comes back to benefit them. Just the other day, Madam Speaker, the county government of Nyamira increased the daily rates for Mama Mboga from 30 shillings to 50 shillings. Boda, there was a tussle the other day to increase the boda rates per day from 10 shillings to 20. And these are Kenyans who are hustling, who make almost $2 a day to fend for their families. And then you find, Madam Speaker, that somebody has the audacity, the courage to again steal from such class of Kenyans. In fact, Madam Speaker, just to join what Senator Cheruiyot was saying, you collect money, but you don't provide even basic services. In our second largest town in Nyamira, Keroka, we have been without toilets in our market for the last 2 years, Madam Speaker. A tender that was given 4 years ago to build toilets has not been completed to date. We also have the distinction as being among the 6 counties whose audited accounts have moved from being qualified to adverse. And you know, some of the factors contributing is just impunity, Madam Speaker. Some of the queries the Auditor General is raising is that there's a circular from SRC that has given a guideline that a governor should not drive, should not buy an official car that is more than 3,000 cc. But my governor has defied the Auditor General for the last 2 financial years and has continued to drive a V8 of 4,600 cc. You know, just sheer impunity. It's like saying utadu, you know. Now we have moved to a level where the auditor is saying we'll mark this as a county that needs to move from qualified to adverse, Madam Speaker. On bursaries, money that is supposed to assist needy children, orphans, Madam Speaker. The auditor is saying you can't withdraw money and then purport to say you are moving around schools, giving 3,000 shillings. Instead of transferring that money direct to schools. In some instances, Madam Speaker, we had a sitting last week with the committee chaired by Senator Ososi, Madam Speaker, and money is sent to a school, but no names are sent. One mzee was even crying, saying, the name of my child appears as having benefited, but that child never benefited. Those are the kind of criminal acts that we are having at our counties. And you know the tragedy is this. EACC can issue a report telling us Nyamira is the leading county in corruption, but there is not even a single case of anybody from the county government of Nyamira who is facing corruption charges in any court of law. There has not been any seizure of assets. If this money was stolen to buy properties in Karen, people are putting up mansionettes with lifts in their houses, and no action has been taken, Madam Speaker. And you know, EACC is chaired by my good friend, Bishop Oginde, a man I hold in high esteem, a man I really respect, Madam Speaker. How are you going to build confidence in our governance, Madam Speaker, if you rate a county as being the leading in corruption, and yet you are taking no action to apprehend the suspects or those who are engaged in corruption, Madam Speaker? And these are the people we are saying this afternoon that we are going to pass the national rating bill and place this money under their control. I can see there is a good effort in this bill to ensure that we discourage manual collection of these rates. We are saying take the money to the bank, pay the money electronically. But there is another clause there that says a CEC can gazette another method of collection, Madam Speaker. And that's where you will create those T-junctions we are talking about, Madam Speaker. Really, this afternoon, I want to speak and appeal to my president. Madam Speaker, unless we tackle corruption at our counties, unless we make corruption extremely painful at the county level, Madam Speaker, our people will continue suffering. Before the committee of Ososi, Madam Speaker, was a situation where 110 million shillings was sent to the county government of Nyamira to build 300 bed capacity emergency COVID response hospital. We were horrified when the governor appeared and said we decided to divert this money for other purposes, which is contrary to the Public Finance Management Act, Madam Speaker. We were horrified that mortgages in Nyamira, Madam Speaker, a cabinet sits and it decides to dish money. There is no security at all, Madam Speaker. There is no format of how you recover this money, Madam Speaker. And this is public money, which is just shared. It's like a cabinet sits and says, today we are giving a governor 20 million. After 3 weeks he comes and he says, I want a top-up. And you are given minutes, say we have given governor a top-up of 3 million. We should not allow this, Madam Speaker. Really, as senators, we must retreat and find a way of dealing with the corruption we are seeing in our counties. And we cannot place our trust in MCAs, Madam Speaker. When we asked the Public Accounts Committee of Nyamira whether they have ever done any report on how money is spent in Nyamira, they said they have never. They have never tabled any report, Madam Speaker. So all these things, we are just seeing them when they appeared before the Ososi-led committee in the Senate. So there's a big gap on how we can protect the public resources. The bill is very good. I like the approach on public participation, Madam Speaker, that for once we are recognizing that the people who reside in counties may not be people who are fluent in either English or Kiswahili, and we are saying there will be serious campaigns in our local FM stations. There will be radio shows, just to ensure that before you make a decision on what you will be charging people who own properties in our urban centers, they have an input. That's very progressive. But the elephant in the room, Madam Speaker, is how to protect these resources. I also must commend the drafters of this bill, because initially I was worried that we may be entering that territory where we want to tax farmers, like our tea farmers, people who own freehold land. But I'm happy that this bill has a clause that specifically excludes any rating from farmers who have freehold land. That majority leader is very commendable. We don't want to overburden Mukulima. The farmer is already suffering. The returns from agricultural produce are not very competitive. So this is good. This is really a good statement of comfort to our farmers, that the people we are targeting are people who are engaged in businesses. People are making some income, who are benefiting from services that are being offered by counties, but who should in return pay these rates so that they can be used to improve the services that they get from our counties. In terms of the tribunal, Madam Speaker, I have no problem with the Judicial Service Commission recruiting the members of this tribunal. But I'm worried that the number we have put at 18, that's a big number. I've not seen a tribunal, Madam Speaker, that has a membership of 18. I think we should consider reducing the number of the members of this tribunal, and also ask some key professional bodies to send nominees. You know, bodies like Law Society of Kenya, bodies like ISPAC, they can be given slots, Madam Speaker, where they pick their representatives who sit in that tribunal. As I get towards conclusion, Madam Speaker, I don't know whether there is wisdom in having Kenya Revenue Authority as a collecting agency for our counties, Madam Speaker. Just 2 years ago, Gladys Wanga took the mantle of leadership in Homa Bay. Homa Bay was collecting less than 300,000 shillings in revenue. But this financial year, Madam Speaker, Gladys Wanga has demonstrated that with good leadership, own source revenue can grow and make a big meaning in the economy of our county. Their collection, as we speak today, Madam Speaker, is at 700 plus million shillings, just within 2 years, Madam Speaker. And you can see what leadership means to our people. In Nyamira, we are still collecting the same money that we used to collect 5 years ago, before we lost our inaugural governor, Governor Nyagarama, Madam Speaker. What that tells you, Madam Speaker, is that the T-junction that Senator Cheruiyot and Senator Mugatana spoke about works very well in Nyamira. It means almost 60% of the rates that we collect from those poor business people, those poor mamambogas, those poor border-borders, goes to the pockets of some leaders from Nyamira County, Madam Speaker. And those are the people, Madam Speaker, you heard, are busy putting up massive buildings in the city of Nairobi. Not even in our county, in the city of Nairobi. Those are people, Madam Speaker, you will not trace them to any businesses. They are not professionals in any field, but their profession is to steal from poor Kenyans. The appeal I make this afternoon, as I conclude, is that it pains me, Madam Speaker, when I see our MCAs not appreciating that they should not be the ones who are encouraging our governors to steal from the poor people that we represent, Madam Speaker. How I pray, Madam Speaker, that we can find a way, that can make Ethics and Corruption Commission to wake up. Do something that will deter future governors from stealing. Because criminal law is about deterrence. Unless you take action, unless people go to court, they are tried and jailed, those criminal acts will continue being repeated. So I appeal to Bishop Oginde, who is heading EACC, to focus on these counties that have been named as being most corrupt, and do something. Because as senators, we can speak here. We can summon governors. We can make recommendations. But unless EACC takes action, we'll be lamenting day after day, Madam Speaker. With those remarks, Madam Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I hope EACC is watching the proceedings with the specific reference to the T-junction, new concept by Majority Leader and the senators who've contributed. Let's have Senator Orwoba Magoma Gloria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to go on record to support this bill by Majority Leader on the national rating. Madam Speaker, I think I have spoken before about the own source revenue issue. We have several counties that are receiving a lot of funds and are unable to account for the funds, but in the same spirit are actually not producing much in terms of own source revenue. As a matter of fact, the statistics are very damning. I'm glad that Senator Mungatana acknowledges that Tana River is one of the counties that receives a lot of funds, even in terms of the supplementary budget, marginalized funds, yet they are unable for many years now to account for what these funds are doing in terms of development and in terms of bringing a return on investment. Madam Speaker, in that sense then, when I saw this, when I went through this bill on the national rating, in terms of how to streamline and give a legal framework on revenue collection on levies and properties in counties, I was very happy. Is one of the counties that brings in a large amount of on-source revenue. But if you question how that revenue is being used and to what extreme measures are being taken to ensure that certain rates, some of them that are completely crazy in terms of even the prices that are put out, you know, you'll be unable to get any answers for the questions that you ask. So, Madam Speaker, this national rating bill, the idea of establishing a tribunal to be able to even have an oversight of what is happening on county level and streamlining that space, Madam Speaker, I think it's about time. And I wanted to also, I wish Majority Leader was here, because I wanted to request that they should even go further, that above and beyond ensuring that this tribunal is used to settle the disputes on issues on levies and payments of the properties, we should also look at how are we channeling this on-source revenue that is coming specifically from the property, from the land rates. Because sometimes you go to counties where you don't have even the infrastructure. Look at Nairobi, for instance. When it rains, we are all swimming, Madam Speaker. Literally. Practically, we are swimming on the road. So you ask yourself, being one of the counties that is collecting a lot of money from property rates, from levies, why isn't that money channeled into ensuring that our infrastructure, even just the drainages on our roads, are maintained? So, Madam Speaker, one of the proposals that I have is that above and beyond giving a framework, a legal framework of how we are going to deal with the imposition of property taxes, there should be an element of, at least to some extent, dictating on how that money is spent. Because it doesn't make any sense that a county as big as Nairobi is earning so much on property taxes, but when we have basic weather changes, it is those same properties that are being hit the highest. So you're collecting so much from the markets. You know, I was so surprised if you go to Dagoretti North, that the markets have been taken over by cartels there. And the rates that are being imposed in Dagoretti North, in the markets there in Kawangware, are crazy. But when it rains, those same markets are the same ones that are hit by floods. They're the same ones whose sewer is blocked. They're the same ones who actually closed shop because yesterday it rained. So there has to be some level of responsibility, and I think that we can legislate this by saying that a percentage of the money that is collected from these property taxes should actually be pumped back into the same infrastructure, in the sense that then even the people who are paying get, they're motivated to pay these levies and these taxes. Madam Speaker, I think in terms of, and I don't know how to hammer this enough, because I've said this before, I am always reading the statistics and trying to highlight that we need to get to a point as a country, and probably when we say this over and over, that we have to live within our means. Our means means that we are literally, if we are earning from property taxes, this own source revenue income that is coming from various taxes, including the property taxes that we are now trying to streamline, Madam Speaker, we also have to demand as a Senate that the counties that are reporting the lowest income own source revenue should be able to tell us that after 20 years, or after I don't know how many years of devolution, why isn't it that you cannot channel these supplementary funds that we're giving you, these marginalized funds that we're giving you, into infrastructural projects or something that is able to now pump back money into the own source revenue? I say this because you have counties such as Wajir, Tana River, Mandera, West Pokot, and Marsabit, who receive the highest funds in terms of allocation, and yet they are actually bringing in the lowest in terms of own source revenue. And no one wants to address that. But it really comes down to, is it that there are no businesses there? Is it that there are no buildings? Is it that there is no form of economic activity? Because as much as we are trying to streamline the property taxes, we also have to ask ourselves, is it that in Tana River, where the own source revenue is only coming to 59 million, which is like a drop in the ocean, is it that they don't have any economic activities there after all these years of pumping in money for infrastructure, after all these years of getting supplementary budgets, after all the oversight? What is the problem? Because we could be legislating here and trying to impose this new law for property taxes, but it might not even be able to affect some of these counties, because I don't understand. Don't they have properties there that they are trying to, have an economic activity? So we will keep running away from the issue of own source revenue versus monies that are being given from the national budget. But at one point, whether we legislate property taxes, whether we legislate all these issues, whether we even deal with corruption, if we cannot understand why certain counties are unable to move from where they were 15 years back, and years after devolution, years after, sending
What's your, Senator Gloria, would you wish to be informed by Senator Danson?
Madam Speaker, I'm in a very good mood, so I will allow for Senator Mungatana to inform me.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I admire the revitalized Senator Gloria and her contributions on this floor since we began. I just wanted to inform her that indeed the economic activities in places like Tana River are dominated by investors in those large parcels of land. Those are the major, but these little investments in the shambas and the houses, the county government hardly collects anything. So why we are saying this rating bill is very good is that if we can streamline the collections from all those big investors, from all those massive irrigation, whatever, and it comes to the county government, then even what they are charging the bar owners, the market owners, it will come down. That is the information I wanted to give my colleague, that indeed the level of economic activity is little. We don't have factories, we don't have industries, but they are huge, investors. But we are collecting nothing from them. They just use the land, make the money, maybe pay government taxes and get nothing for that. So the own source revenue is very little. But if this national rating bill is supported by the Senate and it's passed, our hope is that it will increase the base and we will then benefit from those huge areas that we are covering. Of course, she makes a good point about the pilferages. We have bad mismanagement, and there's no excuse for that. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Gloria, you can resume.
Thank you, Senator Mungatana, for that piece of information. It's actually good to know, because I've been wondering, I've been looking at the figures of Tana River, and it just never made sense. And that is why I'm also saying I support this bill, especially the establishment of the National Rating Tribunal, because in a situation like now Tana River, this tribunal should be able if at all this bill passes and it has to come with regulations, this tribunal then should be able to say, in certain specific areas, these are some of the measures we are going to put in, because we understand that Tana River, for instance, heavily relies on property taxes as an on-source revenue. So how do we customize our regulations to Tana River to the benefit of the people of Tana River? So, and in essence, then what I'm saying is that for Tana River particularly, if that is what you're saying, then you would not, that tribunal would not be able to say that Tana River property taxes are the same as the property taxes in Nairobi, for instance. So my point here is, what this bill will do, and I believe first of all, it is a conversation starter in terms of, we just pay taxes, but what is the expectation for those taxes to do, what is the return on investment on those taxes? In that same spirit, if a county government, and this is where I would propose my amendments, if a county government is actually collecting such high property taxes with whatever justifications, particularly, for instance, in cities like Nairobi, then you also have to be able to justify your expenditure with relevance to the same properties that are earning you your own source revenue. So, Madam Speaker, and I keep leaning back to Nairobi, because Nairobi County is one of the counties that I believe, and I don't want to sound political, but I believe the potential of Nairobi County is not being exploited. What is happening is, because there is a baseline of this is the expected revenue that Nairobi County gives anyway, since time immemorial, since devolution, first of all, there has not been any need to interrogate how that revenue is coming in. And if an audit was to be done in Nairobi County on how the on-source revenue is being generated from Nairobi County, we will come back to the conversation on property taxes. We'll come back to the conversation on the levies that are put on commercial properties, on land and things like that. So, and in the end, the biggest people who are hit by the calamities that sometimes we face in Nairobi County are the same owners of this property. So there has to be some idea of how we can legislate around a percentage of those property taxes being pumped back in to the infrastructure of those localities and the properties around there. So, Madam Speaker, I support this bill. I am very categorical, and I think people who have had conversations with me, I'm very categorical on pushing the conversation of on-source revenue against relying on the national budget, against relying on what we call the supplementary budgets, the marginalized funds, and things like that. And I think it is high time for the counties at the bottom of the list of the on-source revenue, that is Wajir, Tana River, Mandera, West Pokot, and Marsabit. I think it's high time that we started asking the very difficult questions of, why are you still not able to raise your economic activities? What is not happening? Devolution has been here. We have channeled funds down to the county, to the grassroots. We have added supplementary budgets, marginalized funds. A county like Marsabit is receiving a lot of that money. And still, we'll still talk about low income on the own source revenue. Why? So where is the money going? And what is happening? So, Madam Speaker, as I support this bill, I would like to say, and maybe to echo the sentiments of Senator Omogeni, that corruption is one thing that we must deal with. Because whether we legislate the property taxes and we deal with the issue of the T-junctions, if we are not going to talk about what we are going to do with this issue of governors who have decided to just loot the coffers of the county government, then we will not be improving the lives of Kenyans in the grassroots. So with those few remarks, I beg to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gloria. I'll give Senator Catherine Muma to contribute.
Thank you, Madam
Senator Catherine, are you going to exhaust your 15 minutes?
I know I'm supposed to relieve you. I'll go. I'll be very quick. I'll be very quick. Honorable Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to contribute to this bill, the National Ratings Bill. First, I'd like to commend the drafters of the bill. For the first time, I'm seeing a bill that is attempting to at least align with the devolved governance. So this is one of the bills that I hope we can learn from in terms of speaking to a function that belongs to a county and trying to address an issue that affects those counties without taking away that role. Madam Speaker, this bill is actually providing how we can have that intergovernmental cooperation around an issue. And you can see clearly it is about how the counties can collect the rates, and it has gone to extensive length to try and provide on how counties can levy the rates on land and property and how to go about this. Madam Speaker, one of the things that is hoped to be strengthened is the systems for county governments in terms of the rates collection systems. And whereas there are those who think this is going to streamline it, I'm hoping, Madam Speaker, that as we do the regulations, we can find that formula that will keep rates collections to the counties, but ensure that there is transparency and accountability. And the digital system that is supposed to be put in place, I hope can be done in a manner that will ensure that transparency and accountability is achieved. As the law currently is it generally speaks about the electronic payments, but I would hope to find that in practice, we can find a way in which we can find a formula that can ensure the transparency and accountability. Madam Speaker, nearly every county has digitalized collection of own resource, but we have counties that actually have pilferage. So let us also know that even with digitalized systems, there is pilferage. So we need to, in this country, in the country, both at national and county level, we need to find financial systems that can help to ensure transparency and accountability of public funds. Madam Speaker, I will then move on to a few things that I think the movers of the bill need to look at, and they're crucial for me. Madam Speaker, the definition of chief government valuer does not properly align with the roles that they have been given. Here it simply talks about the chief government valuer means the advisor to national and county governments. But when you go and find the role is hardly around advice. So I would suggest that the drafters neaten that so that what the chief advisor is supposed to do is aligned with what is in the text, and the definition captures this accurately. Madam Speaker, I'm also wondering, the tasks given to the chief advisor, to the chief, government valuer, is such that it seems to be an institution, but there is no space in the law that has actually put that institution. So he will be the one to keep, or she will be the one to keep the roles, the rating roles. Have they put any infrastructure to support that office to do the functions they've given? Madam Speaker, I have not seen it done in this law. It is something they need to look at. When come to clause 3 of the bill, actually clause 4. Clause 4 of the bill talks about guiding principles. No, sorry. Yes, clause 4. It says, clause 4.1.2 talks about, says, without prejudice to the generality of subsection 1, a county government shall, and then ensure all of this. When it comes to C, it says, take cognizance of the needs of the counties. Then we are in a subtle way saying that now on-source revenue is the one to actually carry out all of this. We will be contradicting the Constitution. So for clarity and the avoidance of a doubt, I suggest that those words be included in this. In the same clause, when you read subsection 2E, it says, determine the criteria to be applied that property ratings is fair, objective, reasonable, and just by one, applying different forms of rating, different categories of rateable properties. When you come to 4, it says, by increasing rates, taxes, basis. Madam, increasing rates, taxes, basis. Madam Speaker, that means we are giving the permission to counties to only increase rates. Madam Speaker, we must contemplate decreasing of rates. So I suggest the removal of this clause because it is just about increasing rates and taxes, tax basis for the counties. And I suggest we must not bring this sickness of taxation to be again entrenched in law at the county level. Madam Speaker, as I finalize, I also want to bring the Senate's attention to clause 27. Clause 27 says all areas within a county government shall be a rateable area for purposes of this act. Madam Speaker, that means the widow in the far-flung rural areas with a broken house who can hardly find money to pay her, to buy her food, is now being told she'll start paying rates. Currently, rates are payable in respect of urban areas and municipalities. And as areas, we start getting areas urbanizing or urban areas start growing up and becoming municipalities and urban areas, it is good to put rates there. But Madam Speaker, the bulk parts of the rural areas in this country are completely neglected. For us to say, to start now levying this rate against people in the rural areas is objectionable. And I suggest that this clause 27 be removed. Otherwise, every Kenyan in every space prepare to pay taxes, rates. And I would urge the county governments not to be driven into this trick of fighting with Kenyans over unnecessary taxes. Let us pay rates in respect of urban and peri-urban coming areas, but let us stop this appetite for getting money even where there is no money. So I suggest clause 27 be removed from this act. Madam Speaker, I will not speak to the other issues. I have a few others which I'll share with Majority Leader. But I know I have crossed, I need to come and relieve you. But on that clause 27, I urge that it be expunged from this bill. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Catherine. Senator Cherargei Samson.
Madam Speaker, sorry. I want to, from the onset, to support this bill of National Assembly Bills number 55 of 2022, the National Rating Bill 2022. Madam Speaker, I know there is a lot of growth in the country, especially in terms of development and valuation, and acquisition of properties, valuation of properties, even in waivers, and many others, Madam Speaker. You know, in most cases, there is always the issue or the aspect where we do valuation role. As the Vice Chair of County Public Accounts Committee of the Senate, we normally request Madam Speaker on the valuation roll, because it informs the basis of on-source revenue, it involves the basis of valuation, and in terms of assets and liabilities register, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, therefore, it is important in anything that will ensure a framework, because we normally see county governments putting banners, using a lot of money to advertise in radio and media, saying we are doing waivers of land rates, of land fees, and many other charges that they implement. It is important to have a discipline and order in the legal framework. Madam Speaker, and the last week I was privileged. You know, every sector must have an order and discipline. Last week, for example, I was meeting my sugarcane farmers. You know, there is a sugar bill that is under consideration at the moment. And in as much, there must be an order in every sector, so that we don't just wake up one day. You know, you can say you want to do waivers. Kumbe, your intention is to waive on behalf of your friends or specific interests. So there must be a threshold or certain threshold, and therefore, Madam Speaker, the short recess, we have interacted, and there are many land rates and land that have not been paid. And the biggest defaulter is government. You know, most of the time, even in this Nairobi, if Governor Sakaja will tell you, Madam Speaker, most of the defaulting and most of the pending bills is government agencies. That's the sad reality, that being owed billions and billions of shillings. And it hampers the on-source revenue. Madam Speaker, from where I come in Nandi County, for example, on-source revenue is a sad story. We don't want to open it because it looks more like a eulogy of some sort of offense of total misnomer in terms of collection of on-source revenue, Madam Speaker. Because as much as many people see Nandi, because we have tea, and like Makueni, we have cess from sugarcane. For example, cess forms one of the bases. And we were with farmers at Aldai Maraba of Chemelil Chemasa Ward at a place called near Kisumu. That's 17 kilometers near Miwani, a place called Kipkorok, and a place called Samoget, and a place called at Maraba, Maraba Primary School grounds. And one of the issues was, what is the state of cess that is being collected from sugarcane from tea farmers? And you know, it affects the on-source revenue of individual counties. I had the Senator of Nyamira highlighting a county that in terms of change of leadership, it has seen significance where Senator Beatrice Okola comes from. It's about leadership. But my place is that you take cess, the roads are not passable in that Kemaloi Maraba. You go also, I was with the farmers of sugarcane at Chepterwai in Mosop sub-county. And their complaint is about cess, Madam Speaker. So it's this issue of rating and waivers forms part of on-source revenue. And the sugarcane farmers, because we come from the same region, for example, in Northern Nandi, they wanted to be part, as per Oparanya recommendation of sugar, to be part of Kakamega, the Northern Nandi, and part of Bungoma and Trans Nzoia. On the southern part of Nandi, they want to be part of central region of Nandi, Kericho, and Kisumu, because you realize that, interestingly, Madam Speaker, because we are discussing about how to generate on-source revenue, not only in rating, we are 18 kilometers to the next factory in South Nandi. And you are also 18 kilometers to another factory in Kakamega County, for example, it's Butali or Kabras. When you come to this other side, is it Kibos, is it Moroni and Miwani, and also Chemeli. So, Madam Speaker, they were arguing apart from that issue, and the Agriculture Committee will resolve that as a house. I want to assure farmers, because our interest is to protect the interest of farmers, is the issue of cess. They want to see value when they pay sugarcane cess, when they pay tea cess. And we are lucky as Nandi County, because we have cess. You go to Makueni, I don't know whether mung beans pay cess, for example. I don't know whether mung beans pay cess. I don't know whether fish pay cess, but I highly doubt, Madam Speaker, you and me, because you come from that region, there is cess that comes from you. But we must see the value in terms of maintenance of roads. In this valuation and powers of valuers, and we have a number we need to ensure we organize, because these valuers are very important, but we don't want them to inflate the issue of valuation. so that it becomes easy, Madam Speaker. And on the issue of discount, I think when they do waivers, these governors, they must be specific how many discount are they giving out. Because when you buy something, you are given 10% discount. But some of these waivers, they do it, they do it 100%. But when also they give out discount, they give out 50%. So how will you enhance and generate own source revenue, Madam Speaker? So I will just say 3 things in quick succession so that we can allow colleagues to ensure that we finish on this bill and moving forward. Like the county may levy rates on land and building in accordance with the provision of this act. This has been provided under article, under the provision of the Constitution, empowered to do taxation by county governments. And I think there is nothing new here because levy rates on land or buildings, but they should not also become unpredictable because it will affect the ease of doing business. Because if you are paying land rate, for example, 1,000 shillings maybe per acre, then you allow counties are free and they might amend in the next financial year because of the appetite of raising own source revenue, they might decide to do 10,000. So you are chasing investors. In fact, Madam Speaker, sorry, you, at least you are more exposed than a number of us. You know, in some countries, the rich don't pay tax. And if I know that, I know many people are uncomfortable. The reason they don't pay tax is to give them to do investment. When they do investment, they hire more people. Then you go for your VAT or payee, sorry, for your money. And that's how you recoup in terms of, I know for people like senior counsel, Daniel Mahanzo, might not agree with me, but when you travel, the serious established economies, the rich don't pay tax. Because they are being encouraged, being given incentives to invest more. Because if you allow a factory to be established, for example, in Chemelil, Chemase, if in my county Nandi, and you are doing around $1 billion, it can hire to 2,000 engineers than the tax that you are paying, Madam Speaker. So I think we need to look at clause number 7, and I know the leader of majority is following and listening. Any form, and we should not allow counties to do more because we have seen how they are doing Finance Act. Finance Act that is not, Madam Speaker, on the notice of red, under the act shall be due financial fee, which is levy. I think it is Financial Act and Finance Bill that is in the counties. I know at the moment, Madam Speaker, we are trying to enhance accountability. There is a proposal to reduce the time period of doing financial statements by county governments and other entities to be within 1 month, as opposed to 3 months as provided by by Public Finance Management Act, and even amending in terms of audit public standards and standards and audit board to be changed so that it would move from accrual or cash to accrual basis in terms of running audit, Madam Speaker. On the issue of payment of rates, I think we need to be careful on this one, Madam Speaker, having sat some time now as a county public accounts member, we need to be careful in terms of payment because counties take advantage. Can you believe one county had almost 100 commercial bank accounts? And some of them even were putting money that is given through World Bank or conditional grants, Madam Speaker. And you know the law is very clear that under PMF Act you must create a special purpose account. But you find counties are opening 17, others are opening 20 commercial bank accounts without following the Public Finance and Management Act. And that is prone because, in fact, Nandi, for example, in the last financial year, we received money from Kenya Urban Support Program. Let me use Nandi because it's by county. We had, and we received millions and millions of shillings. The CCM Finance, in consultation with the governor, decided to open a fixed account so that they can get interest, violating the opening of special purpose account. So when you tell counties we need to agree on how they pay payment of rates, and this issue of pay bill is another elephant in the room. The automation of revenue system, the issue of M-Pesa, the issue of issuing M-Pesa, we must be very careful. And also in terms of paying cash, I remember a county used to collect, and I think I'm trying to recall the county in which financial year, Madam Speaker, they used to collect some amount, but every time between the county office and the National Bank is less than 100 meters, but they used to lose 96,000 every day that used to leak because they were going to bank the cash, Madam Speaker. So we must be careful, and I agree with you largely, because we don't need to introduce other taxes and levies in terms of our process, Madam Speaker. So we must agree on how we need to pay, but we must agree designated revenue receiver of a county to transmit to the county treasury. It is important so that this process is not abused, Madam Speaker. And also we should find a way, if you pay more or you pay less, what are the remissions, what are the remedies that needs to be plotted. The second final point is on discount. I think it needs to be fair, it must be vetted, it must be agreed, and due diligence. Discounts are only given based on assessment. You don't just wake up one day and ensure and just give people without history, looking at the history, the credit worth, the performance of business, because it doesn't make sense, Madam Speaker, to give out just for the purposes of giving out, Madam Speaker. I had one of my colleagues talking about this as a corruption and the issue of waivers. Sometimes you find people are given waivers because they want to sell a property and they have agreed with county officials on how they are going to do that, Madam Speaker. The issue of valuation, I agree largely, Madam Speaker, and many others, so that I allow my colleagues, let me say this in conclusion, so that I allow my colleagues to contribute also. That as a country, I agree that the issue of valuation, this is an important bill. But we are now bringing order and sanity in terms of valuation and the rating, this that we have, Madam Speaker. But we must agree as a country, and I remember my colleague Senator Commissioner say something about corruption. I normally see EACC, and many people have accused me that I don't like EACC. It's not that I don't like it, it's I like saying the truth. EACC says there is corruption in counties. I have seen them doing a wage bill conference. I'm surprised, Madam Speaker. Your office, you as the Speaker was never invited. Parliament is never part of the conversation. Yet we are the ones who made regulations that wage bill should not go beyond 35% as per the PMF Act. Yet I have not seen the input of Parliament. Yet we are the ones drafting the necessary legislation and legislative intervention in terms of wage bill. We have a crisis in counties. Even when you go to Makueni, we have different crises in terms of wage bill, even when you go to Homa Bay, Madam Speaker. You have the staff that came with defunct municipalities, including what we call rat catchers. Are you aware, Madam Speaker, some of the counties have what we call rat catchers? They are working in the previous defunct, and you cannot fire them. Senator Manso will tell you, you fire them, they are permanent and pensionable, the labor court will return them, Madam Speaker. And they are rat catchers, their business is to just catch rats. And they are earning salary, Madam Speaker. So it's very unfortunate. You go to Garissa, for example. Garissa are paying 11 retired employees salary up to now, losing millions and millions of shillings. You go to Kisii, we got an old man who is beyond 60 years, is still earning a salary. Yet the circular from the National Treasury and from the Public Service says, if you are beyond 60, unless you are a judge or you have an exception or you are a person living with disability, you are given an exception. So as we even have the wage bill conference that we are discussing, I would have expected Parliament to give their experience so that we can see how we can cut. I am aware, Madam Speaker, that national government is spending whopping 1.1 trillion in terms of wages, Madam Speaker, in this country. And therefore, even as they do that conference, I don't know where they will take resolutions. Because I thought Parliament should be there so that we can transit those resolutions to policy and legislative intervention. And if need be, how do we assist counties? They are defunct municipal council employees. Now they are employees employed by governors. Then now when somebody wins an office, they always come with their brigade. I'm told in the former Bungoma, when a governor was there, and Senator Ogola, who used to work with county, there was a time a former governor hired people to only carry his chair around and public toilet, Madam Speaker. And they are being paid. So we should be sitting as Parliament and Senate at the wage bill conference, and telling the policymakers and governors to stop such misuse and abuse of resources, Madam. And that is why you have seen, Madam Speaker, I saw you a senator, and I want to congratulate you. I didn't know you are that courageous when you join yours truly to condemn the harassment of Senator Okiya Omtata, Madam Speaker. That's why when you go to functions, governors have a lot of money that they have personal militia. You want to question something, you hear heckling, you hear harassment. It's because there is no proper guidance in terms of wage bill. And when you ask those people, in fact, the governors nowadays have private militia to harass anybody who opposes them. They have hired radio callers to call in the morning in our local dialect stations and insult them. Others are what we call online army for the governors to insult people on social media. You know, and they are being paid. These are the ghost workers. Almost all counties, in fact, Nandi is leading in terms of ghost workers. And there is, out of 4 billion, in Nandi, more than 1 billion is paid to ghost workers. Just the work is to insult somebody who contravenes or questions the governor. It is good some of us are matured and we have PhD in handling such. But I empathize and sympathize with the people who are elected. But I'm happy people like Senator Manso might be enjoying because they have commandeering with my former colleague and my former member of jail, Governor Mutula. But when you go to your county, I was shocked. Somebody was still talking and questioning something which is valid. He was questioning about a road. Somebody stood up and took a microphone and wanted to beat somebody. It is because we have not done very well in terms of putting a leash on governors, such that they have a lot of money that they want to hire people who do not have any business in terms of growth of form a platform for abuse, Madam Speaker. With those very many remarks, I beg to support with amendments. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Beatrice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, from the onset, I want to support this bill and to say that it is a bill that should have come like yesterday. Madam Speaker, just because it is spelling out the role of valuation. Madam Speaker, I used to work in the county of Homa Bay, the way Senator Cherargei has indicated, and precisely I worked as a CEC lands. And Madam Speaker, I want to say valuation has been a big challenge to counties since the onset of counties. And while I was there, Madam Speaker, in 2013, to give a very specific example, that there was only one government valuer that was handling Kisii, Nyamira, Migori, and Homa Bay. And that was replicated in all other counties, Madam Speaker. To the extent that when counties wanted to purchase anything or do anything that involved valuation, you had to book with that one valuer. And remember, he already had a schedule set out in all the 4 counties. So each county kept on waiting. And it ended up that this valuer was like a god figure in the county because he served at a whim. And he would come for very few minutes, Madam Speaker. So I'm happy that this now is being provided for in the national rating bill that we are discussing. And Madam Speaker, I want to support also the fact that there will be a chief government valuer. Of course, with restricted mandate. Madam Speaker, because there is need to be an office that is setting standards, that is giving guidelines that will be harmonized across the counties. Madam Speaker, you know we have the 47 governments with one national government. It is important that all the counties do the same in terms of standards, in terms of guidelines of valuation. And so I support the fact that there is need to be a chief government valuer, but that does not mean, Madam Speaker, that the chief government valuer will go to perform county functions. Madam Speaker, I'm happy that this bill also gives the counties the power to employ valuers in the counties that will be dealing with valuation activities, and of course harmonize with the chief valuer. So the initial fear I had, Madam Speaker, is that the chief government valuer was going to be like some prefect, some supervisor. But I'm happy that we should restrict the functions of this chief government valuer to guidelines, to standards, and to overseeing that these standards and policies is undertaken in all the counties. This to me is going to set order across the counties. Madam Speaker, in the counties, to be specific, initially during the local authorities and even with the counties at the onset, you'd be surprised that in the urban centers, big establishment, big properties, having big activities would pay less taxes than the common market woman that takes their tomato, vegetable, onion, some banana in some trough. And this is how it used to be, Madam Speaker, that these market women and men would pay excess of an example 100 shillings per day. Madam Speaker, if you worked on that total, 100 shillings per day for a month meant that this poor woman selling bananas, just one trough of banana, was paying 3,000 to the county in terms of cess. If you multiplied that times 12 months, it meant that this cess was totaling to something not less than 36,000, Madam Speaker. But here you had one property owner in a town, one person holding land in a town, paying 10,000 in a year. So it just meant that the common market women were being taxed more by the counties as opposed to the bigger establishment. And that is why I'm supporting this bill, that after valuation, the property owners and the landowners would be paying rates that are commensurate to what they have. But Madam Speaker, as this is done, as valuation is done, that in the urban centers, solid waste management, both solid and water waste is managed. Madam Speaker, we want to see, as Senator Gloria Roba was saying, that stormwater management is put in place so that our towns do not flood. We want to see that there's proper planning, physical planning of our urban centers, and the required facilities are in place, like marketing lights. Madam Speaker, it is unfortunate that in some counties, counties collect cess and taxes from markets that have not even been compensated. That those markets are still sitting on freehold lands. That somebody owns some land, a market is growing, and the counties are collecting. I have one such market in my ward called Kodumba Market, a market that is still owned by an individual, Madam Speaker. This is a poor family that has made endless trips to get compensation, yet the government of the day is collecting cess and collecting taxes from that market. So, Madam Speaker, the county governments must also compensate those landowners even as they collect taxes. Madam Speaker, I also want to touch on the issue of on-source revenue. Sometimes I think most of the counties just bring the issue, quote figures of on-source revenue just to balance their budget. Because, Madam Speaker, after even the fact that they quote, you see, it is so exciting that County A used to collect B, but now they collect so much. But it stops just at the figures. Are these increases reflected in the outcomes for our people? Do we see some of these increases getting invested back to our people? And that brings me to the issue of also pending bills of the counties. We would be happy as a Senate that as the on-sales revenue is increasing, we'd also see that the counties are paying their pending bills. Madam Speaker, there is always a tired excuse that counties give, and it is very easy. I've often heard it with Nairobi County, that the pending bills we have were bills that were accrued from the defunct authorities. Madam Speaker, to me, that is a big lie. Because even then, when the counties came in, we are seeing the pending bills increasing. We are not seeing the pending bills being paid. Madam Speaker, why I'm keen on the issue of the pending bills is that the pending bills should be a fast charge on budgets. But we do not see them being paid. The pending bills, we also talk about the aging system, where you should be able to pay what was earlier committed in counties, but we see the pending bills are increasing. So, Madam Speaker, I support the national rating bills, and just to illustrate, when the counties came in being, and I've said it here, that I was a CEC of lands and housing, it was so pathetic, Madam Speaker, that in houses that were built by the defunct local authority and were inherited by the Homa Bay County government, when I went through, we saw houses, people living in 2-bedroom houses, 3-bedroom houses, and they were paying as little as 800 shillings, Madam Speaker, when the market value of such houses in the same town was over 20,000 shillings. And Madam Speaker, this was because no valuation had been done from the 70s. And so there was no basis for even increasing the collections from those houses. So, Madam Speaker, I support the national rating bill. I support the fact that valuation now is now being standardized, is now being harmonized. There are set guidelines that are going to be used by the chief government valuer to oversee how valuation will go about in all the counties, and we call upon the counties to be as consultative as possible, because that is also indicated in the bill. I'm happy that it's going to be participatory a process. Madam Speaker, as the counties collect, we would like to see services being given back to the people from the collections that they make. Madam Speaker, I support.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very important bill. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, the titling of the bill is a national rating, bill coming from a National Assembly, and therefore has been prepared, and most probably public participation done by the National Assembly, and it is done mainly as if it's for national purposes. And under its section 55, it seeks, to repeal CAP 267 and CAP 266. CAP is, act which dealt with the old authorities, and the 266 had something to do with the ratings. And I do agree that as the years move, and now that we're in devolution time, we should now deal with devolution and as a Senate. And one of the things I think should happen is this bill should be subjected again to public participation at the counties, so that the counties have their say. The National Assembly and the Senate are making a law for the counties. And I believe there was no sufficient public participation during the National Assembly proceedings. And therefore, it should be a culture that when law is being made for the counties and comes to the Senate from the National Assembly, then we should do public participation so so that we can do proper amendments of this particular law, and so that it begins giving meaning to the law itself. When you look at where delegated legislation is going to originate, it says the cabinet secretary. The cabinet secretary may make regulations generally for the better carrying out or effect of the provisions of this act. It doesn't say which cabinet secretary. So then, who is the decision maker on this? Is it the lands cabinet secretary? Is it a cabinet secretary in charge of devolution? Most probably it means the lands cabinet secretary, but you can see that needs to be clarified further. Now, quite a lot of times, you have seen almost every governor putting up a very big banner. I've seen that for governor of Nairobi. I've seen that for governor of Kiambu. Then it runs a lot of adverts in the radio stations and TV stations. Oh, we are going to exempt, taxes for leasing and all these for this number of months, and we extend from December to January, then March. I believe these counties are losing revenue. If you are, and then this advert is going to who? Is it to the government, to the national government institutions, which have failed to pay land rates, for such a long time? What happens to stadiums which occupy land in the counties and they pay land rates, and which is the ministry in charge of this? Now that sports have been devolved, then automatically it means the county government has something to do with that particular one. Now, it is even worse. Under section 27 of this bill, which, Madam Speaker, you had drawn it to our attention while you were contributing. You see, this particular section makes nonsense of the whole of this bill. And it takes Kenyans to the overtaxation, which we see is going on in the country currently. When you make law loosely, and that's why I'm saying proper public participation is important. You have a subtitle there, declaration of rateable areas. Then you go to say all areas within a county government shall be rateable area for purposes of this act. First of all, it's a national act, because also the national government makes ratings on the national properties or on the national level. And then now you have such a law be enacted for the counties and making it everywhere. So it means every single agricultural land can be rated. There will be taxes from it. It means houses can be rated. It means county, the towns can be rated, the markets can be rated. And ordinarily, just as Honorable Cherargei had said, the Senator for Nandi, distinguished senator, that you can rate and then overdo it. You can actually tax the rich less than the poor. You heard the contribution of Senator Beatrice, that in fact the Mama Boga selling vegetables, paying some monies every day in the market, ends up paying more money than somebody who owns buildings worth billions of shillings in a market or in a town. Now, you need to balance so that there is no discrimination. The moment this rate becomes discriminative, then it becomes unconstitutional. And whether you beat up Senator Mutata or you kill him, somebody will still go to court and say this act is unconstitutional. It doesn't matter whether Senator Mutata is alive or dead. His spirit lives in very many Kenyans, and he works for very many Kenyans for the benefit of the nation. Therefore, if we are making an unconstitutional law which ends up being discriminatory, then we are making a law which the courts will easily find out that it is unconstitutional, even when there are movies suo moto, without being moved by Senator Omutata or any other senator or any other Kenyan. And therefore, we have to make a law which is within the Constitution. When you come to the tribunal, there are many other laws which compare as to tribunals. Some tribunals, like in the Cooperatives Act and the SACCO Act, SACCO Regulations Act, they have tribunals where a magistrate sits. And then this magistrate is aided by experts in that area. Now here you have a tribunal which is unconstitutional, seating 18 people. Even the best practice on the world goes up to 9. Even IBC, as a maximum. So averagely 7, a tribunal seat is 7, will make sense. Now, when you have a tribunal seating 18 people, ordinarily even the number is even. It's either 7, it's either 5, actually go 3, 5, 7, 9 out of the 40, which is likely to happen. So as a Senate, we need to raise the occasion and agree to amend this act thoroughly, first of all, for the benefit of devolution, and secondly, for the benefit of the country. Now, when you raise this money, some counties have tried. They have come up with some pay bill numbers and every other service to the county, like Machakos County had done that, Makueni County. Every other payment to the county is made through a number, and therefore you can collect monies, and these monies have a better way of management. A lot of times where you have to send people to the markets to collect cash from traders, then how truthful. And even when you are using receipts, some of these people will even print extra receipts and then go and raise money and go home with the money, and in the evening surrender very little to the county, of which that process of even ever banking that money in cash, it takes a very honest person to do that. But the nature of human beings is that human beings, when it comes to corruption, have become worse than Satan himself. So if you have to check corruption, beginning from the national government to the county's government, then EACC has a bigger job to do. And unless EACC is strengthened enough, and unless EACC is not guided from a certain corner, and unless EACC is not being malicious, because most of the prosecutions, you hear they go for over 10 years, and then eventually the investigations by EACC or the DCI ended up, not much, the person even ends up being acquitted on a no case to answer. Under Section 210, even before you could put that person on their own defense, because the whole trial against a governor or a former governor or against a government official ends up being a charade or a political witch hunt. So we really have to draw the lines, and EACC has to be very independent. The prosecuting bodies, as required by the Constitution, have to be independent, so that you don't end up with a prosecution which is a sham, where you waste government resources. There must be at least a station of EACC in every county, where members of parliament or members of public can even write anonymous letters and give evidences to who is corrupt for further investigation. Unless we deal with corruption in the counties, and some of it is even done without the knowledge of the governors. So due to perpetual succession, you find a governor inheriting pendy bills which are in themselves corrupt, which are unconstitutional, which were even for activities which were not meant for the county to do. And when you have a former governor abandoning pendy bills, illegal activities to an incoming governor, and then on the basis of perpetual succession, you want the new governor to bear responsibility of the former governor, then it becomes very complicated. And when this matter is brought to us, we refer it to investigative agencies, you end up tainting the name of a new governor who means well and you leave the old governor who was stolen and looted to get scot-free. So we must really look at the whole idea of penny bills, the whole idea of raising a lot of monies. When we raise these monies, this act has not come up with proper measures of how you deal with on-source revenue. And I'm very sure if it is properly done, on-source revenue is a lot. It can be able to sustain the counties in a great manner, and it can complete some of the activities in the counties for the benefit of the people. But, Madam Speaker, when these monies are raised, then we have weak mechanism as to how we have now rated, but then we have put all the monies together into an account. You hear of counties with 100 accounts, you know, bank accounts. What for really? A county government needs not more than 3 bank accounts based on the purposes of what the county is going to do. And it's a better way of managing and accountability, you know. So if you have 22 CECs, or even 10, 12, why will you have 100 bank accounts as a county? So then this rating act, you know, when you raise the money, this act is meant for raising money of the county. When you raise the money, there must be a proper way of the money getting accounted. The weakening of the county assemblies, if you weaken county assemblies, if the county assemblies are not strong enough to raise against the governor or to check the governor properly, we as the Senate deal when, when all the processes have been completed, and we deal with audited reports, and where there are audit queries, and where certain things have not been done well. So there's a lot of money being lost in the counties, even without the knowledge of the governor, or without proper legal mechanisms. Like now we have been presented with a very weak act by the National Assembly, proposed from the executive, without even being clear which cabinet secretary is squarely dealing with this and can make regulations which will make effect. It means then we are failing from Parliament itself before we end up in any of the systems of the counties. So the counties' money collecting measures should be totally effective, so that the county ministers are accountable, so that the people who are raising the monies are accountable, and so that the right people are levied properly, so that you don't leave out the bourgeoisies in the county owning properties who pay very little, and then the market people and the people who are walking around in the counties doing the so-called reja business are the ones who are paying more, or even the small industrialists in the county, like somebody who is just grinding maize, from hard maize into wheat flour. You find that particular investor a little time, small time, but doing value addition into making flour by grinding gorongoros of maize, is paying more than somebody who is collecting rent, commercial rent, heavily every month. So, Madam Speaker, this act is important, but during the third reading, the Senate has got a lot of work to do. The committee in the nation, and especially the leader of majority, and the leader of majority carries a very important role in this House. He is now required to co-sponsor this law with the leader of majority of the National Assembly, who I have a lot of respect for. Having been to Alliance Boys and having been in Parliament for 3 terms, is fairly experienced, and having been dealing with finances. And therefore, it is good that there is comparison of the proper records of what has happened in the National Assembly. What is the record of having done proper public participation in this? I strongly propose that we have to send this act again for public participation. Otherwise, we'll be making an illegal law as a House, and this is a matter, whether Mutata is beaten up or not, we must go back to court to deal with any other act we have passed without redoing public participation as a Senate, especially when it originates and when it is co-sponsored by the 2 leaders of majority. When our own leader of majority co-sponsors, he must have a voice. He must have direction in co-sponsoring an act of parliament, not just rushing it through the Senate, getting a rubber stamp and forwarding it to the executive for signature, when we know very well, even on the face of it, is a very defective law, especially Section 27 of this bill. I thank you, Madam Speaker. I can only support this law with amendments. As it is bad law for the country, and we have been in business of passing bad laws originating from the National Assembly. I think this should be the last one. We should put down our foot, make the necessary amendments, call for mediation, and make sure we have a law which is best for the counties and which is best for the Kenyans. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
I now call the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to thank colleagues who have taken time to speak to this extremely important bill, and I take their comments in good order. I only take exception to the comments by Senator Danson Maanzo, because you know Senator Maanzo is a senior legislator, among the senior most in the House, having been in the corridors of Parliament for the last 12 years. And listening to him, Madam Speaker, I listened to him espouse on the benefits of the bill, what needs to be done, what needs to be changed, then conclude by a very colloquial remark that has become commonplace in this House, Mr. Speaker, of saying, this is a bad law. Now, what I don't understand is, when a bill is at second reading, Dan Manzo, and there are elements to it that you agree and elements that you think need to be made better, how does it become bad law? I thought as a senior legislator, what you need to do, the guidance that you need to give to the House, because you are a leader and a senior leader in the House, and to your colleagues as well who look up to you as somebody who has been around for long, is to draft the necessary amendments once we get into the next stage of the bill, because there's a reason why bills go through first reading, second reading, then committee of the whole, is so that you align it to the things. Otherwise, unless, and I have said this many times, unfortunately, maybe I say it in evenings such as this when the House is almost empty, that unless a bill is flawed ab initio totally, such that if it is set out to do something that is completely against the rules of a country and constitutional, is when you can declare it a bad law at second reading. We were actually protesting the other day what the National Assembly did in rejecting a Senate bill at second reading. And I spoke at length about abuse of legislative procedure. Therefore, Senator Maanzo, I believe you can do better by guiding many of your colleagues to appreciate how you align a law. For example, if you're clear in your mind that there are certain things that need to be aligned, well and good, but listening to the comments of many of the people that spoke here, from the seconder to colleagues across the aisle, they agree that there is a need to provide this legislative framework for uniformity of rates that are being paid and the process of how to go about it. The rest are details, how you want to align it to the Constitution, how you think maybe this is an overreach for one reason or the other. Those are things that we could always agree or disagree on, because it's about process. But by and large, I take comfort in the fact that many of our colleagues have said there is need for this law in our various counties, so as to provide a standardized platform that applies across all the 47 counties, Madam Speaker, so that we are able to even boost on-source revenue in our various counties, Madam Speaker, and ensure that there is taxation equity, so that you just don't tax those at the bottom of the pyramid who have no opportunity to go to the offices of the governor and negotiate for their own favorable rates, like the big landowners do. And I gave the examples of multinationals. Senator Cherargei, you are not there at that time, but now you know that multinationals, for example, in Nandi, if you are to check, many of them perhaps pay a land value of early 90s, while we are in 2024. This is the law that will guide and standardize for all. Therefore, Madam Speaker, this is an important piece of legislation that entrenches devolution. One of the challenges that devolution suffers is underfunding. And we cannot continue. We have all argued before the House here before, Madam Speaker, and say there'll be no day, either now or even in the future, that we will say counties or national government are now fully funded. That's why there's something called budgeting. And budgeting is political all over the world because you share resources that are finite. And you say, give priority here, give priority there. Therefore, we must begin to nurture our counties to have the culture of raising on-source revenue in a fair way, in a manner that doesn't put much burden to the ordinary citizens, but also in a way that helps them to meet some of their objectives without over-relying, Madam Speaker, on only the share of the nationally raised revenue, because there is revenue that can be raised locally. That's why we are even pushing and arguing for the natural resources benefit sharing bill, so that many of our counties, including Makueni, where Senator Maanzo comes from, that has a lot of natural resources, the county government of Makueni can benefit from those resources. And we need to expedite such laws because we are trying to foster devolution by ensuring that counties are at least near self-sustaining on account of revenue that is raised locally, even as we divide whatever is shared nationally. Therefore, I thank you, colleagues, for your comments and the time that you have taken to contribute to this bill. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I beg to reply. Madam Speaker, further to that, in accordance to Standing Order number 66.3, I beg to request that you defer the putting of question until a later date. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. It is so deferred. Honorable members, we now reorganize the order of business again. We now move to order number 11.
Order number 11, the Maternal, Newborn and Child Health Bill, Senate Bills number 17 of 2023, second reading.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the Maternal, Newborn and Child Health Bill, Senate Bill 17 of 2023, be read a second time. Madam Speaker, I'm happy that as I move this bill, I'm moving it amidst the background that there is a challenging situation in this sector, that I present this bill to the House when medics are on strike. And Madam Speaker, from the onset, I would like to state that medics are very important in the implementation of this bill, the Maternal, Newborn and Child Health Bill. And so, as a country and as a House, we must take note of the challenge that the medics have. Earlier, I heard Senator Cherargei say that the President, that it is only the Council of Governors or the Council of Governors that should take the major blame or should take a major role in solving the medics' challenge. But Honorable Madam Speaker, I want to say that the President, the buck stops with the President because he's the head of state. And so he must look into the problem that the doctors have. And Madam Speaker, each one of us that have interacted with doctors, we know the many years they take as they undertake their studies. This is an area of profession where there's a lot of precision, a lot of passion, and they do their training for so many years, for one to become a doctor, for one to become a nurse. And with the work, the services that they give to our people, I think as a country, we must look at the welfare of doctors. And if you look at what the doctors are asking for, I do not think it is too much. Madam Speaker, the bill, the Maternal, Newborn and Child Health Bill, is a bill that purposes to enhance the status of maternal health care to the required international standards. Madam Speaker, This bill seeks to create a framework for the well-being of pregnant mothers, for the well-being of newborn babies, and for the well-being of children, Madam Speaker, up to 12 years. Madam Speaker, I would start by giving a small background. If we refer back to the 2022 Demographic Health Survey, it states that there's a percentage of women aged 15 to 19. And Madam Speaker, those are purely adolescents who have ever been pregnant. Madam Speaker, if you go down to the statistic, in Samburu County, it is states 50%. In West Pokot, it is 36%. In Marsabit, it is 29%. In Narok, it is 28%. In Meru, it is 24%. In Homa Bay, my county, it is 23%. In Migori, it is 23%. In Kajiado, 22%. Siaya, 21%. Baringo, 25%. Madam Speaker, the lowest is only in Nyeri and Nyandarua, that is 5%. Madam Speaker, what does that percentage indicate to us? It only indicates that as a country, we must take issues of maternal health very seriously. Madam Speaker, let me go ahead to give some background. Madam Speaker, on 12 October 2023, Dr. Ann Beatrice Kihara took over as the president of FIGO. Madam Speaker, FIGO is the International Federation of Gynecology and Obstetrics. This was celebrated in Paris on the 24th FIGO World Congress held at the Paris Convention Center in France. I bring this background because it is so crucial to us as a nation. Because Madam Ann Beatrice, Dr. Ann Beatrice Kihara, is the first black president ever from the sub-Saharan Africa. Madam Speaker, Dr. Ann Kihara is a Kenyan, is a mother, is a specialist gynecologist, is a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi, is a fierce advocate for women's health. But why I bring this outstanding day, Madam Speaker, is the declaration that Dr. Ann Beatrice Kihara made when she was being crowned as the president of FIGO. And Madam Speaker, I quote, "Universally, the measure of a country's state of health is predicted by its maternal mortality ratio." Madam Speaker, that just builds to the fact that as a country, we must step up services that we give to pregnant mothers, services that we give to newborn babies, and services that we give to children that I will be spelling out here, and be specific that children that go up to the age of 12. Madam Speaker, as a background, I also bring another commentary from a doctor gynecologist. That is Dr. Nelly Bosire, who is also a gynecologist. And Madam Speaker, she has a very outstanding commentary that she made about maternal health. And I quote, Madam Speaker, "We cannot quite celebrate our great technological advances in healthcare when at such a basic level, mothers continue to die while trying to secure the continuity of our future generations." Madam Speaker, how else would we get future generations into this country and into the universe if it is not at childbirth? Madam Speaker, it is also worth noting something that happens every other day in our counties. In my county, in Homa Bay, Madam Speaker, at the beginning of this year, we lost Mrs. Opio Milton, who died at Ongako Dispensary in Dewa constituency. This is a young woman, Madam Speaker, who walked, having attended her clinics, who walked majestically, expecting to walk out of hospital with a young baby, a bundle of joy. But what happened? In 20, 30 minutes, this young woman who walked to Ongako Health Center had passed on, Madam Speaker. And on the same note, just this year, Madam Speaker, we lost 2 students, one Caroline Orowe and another a young student from a village, a remote village in my constituency called Legodo. And this happened in Dewa Hospital. And Madam Speaker, that is reflective on what Dr. Nelly Bosire had indicated, that we cannot celebrate the technologies while each minute we are losing young women at childbirth. And Madam Speaker, I know that is a story that all of us would say. We can count numbers of young women or women that we lose during childbirth. Madam Speaker, Dr. Nelly Bosire went to make in her commentary that worse is that we cannot assure that every baby born stands a fighting chance celebrating their first month of life. Madam Speaker, that is so outstanding to all of us and to all of us as Kenyans, that from a professional standpoint, from a gynecologist obstetrician, she is saying that it is worse, that not every baby that is born stands a fighting chance of living beyond 1 month. Madam Speaker, what else do we need to do other than to strengthen services for pregnant mothers, to strengthen services for newborn babies, and to strengthen services to children, Madam Speaker, because this is the continuity of our future generation. Madam Speaker, Dr. Nelly Bosire ended by saying we must be intentional about reducing preventable maternal deaths. That as we celebrate increased antenatal visits, when we look at our records, Madam Speaker, we are able to pick from the hospitals, from the health centers, from the dispensaries, from our referral hospital, figures that show that there is increased antenatal visit attendance. But as we celebrate this, Madam Bosire says that as we celebrate the increased antenatal visit attendance and scale birth attendance delivery indices, these exciting indices have not translated to reduced maternal deaths. That, Madam Speaker, as a country, even where we are talking about records that show increases in women visiting antenatal clinics, that even when we have records that shows that there are skilled birth attendants that are attending to our pregnant mothers, Madam Speaker, it is so sad to notice that those records, increases in records, have not translated to reduce maternal deaths. And Madam Speaker, this maternal and newborn and child health bill is specifically strengthening the services that we give to these 3 components, so that at the end of it, as a country, we are able to reduce maternal deaths, and as a country, Madam Speaker, we are able to give services that are to the international standards. Madam Speaker, an economist also asked, if we have invested as a country, if we have invested so much in bringing our mothers to hospitals and dispensary, why are they still dying, Madam Speaker? If the hospitals are there, we have invested in bringing them to the hospitals and the dispensary, why are they still dying, Madam Speaker? It is time to work on the quality of our service provisions. And Madam Speaker, there are critical questions we must ask ourselves. Is the service we are providing meeting the bare minimum quality standards? Second question, Madam Speaker, Are our facilities ready to ensure the highest attainable standards of care? And Madam Speaker, there are concerns that must be addressed by our health system. One is the quality of service delivery to our own mothers. Two, Madam Speaker, we must address the shortfalls in health system financing. Is the right models in place for delivering the maternal care? Madam Speaker, other concerns that we must address is the inadequate workforce available for patient care, both in numbers and scales, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I was once, in my earlier active maternal life, I was once admitted to the Homa Bay District Hospital then, Ward 2, if I remember to be precise. And I spent almost 7 days in that ward. And Madam Speaker, as I was there as a patient, I thank God I had a very committed doctor. That was the district gynecologist at that time, the Lord Dr. Ojwang Ayoma. May the Lord rest his soul in peace. That was a man that had passion in his work. I remember as I was lying there in my bed, sometimes in the night, and young women, because I've told you that was a maternal ward, young women kept on coming with different problems, from aborted pregnancies in the night to mothers struggling who have been brought from over 50 kilometers away, being driven on rough roads. And as soon as they came, they were either losing their babies or some losing their lives. When I was there, I saw the nurses, the few nurses that would be available, sometimes 2 nurses on a night shift, serving over 50 mothers coming, and some of them coming at the same time and crying, some of them losing their lives, some of them losing their babies. And that is why I'm saying, have we addressed the inadequacies of have we addressed the inadequate workforce available for patient care? And I'm very specific both in numbers and scales. The reason why I appreciate the Lord Dr. Ayoma, he came for all the calls that came to attend to women, whether he was on duty or not on duty. And I saw the few personnel struggle with the women. So, Madam Speaker, as I talk about the maternal, newborn and child bill, we are here to address, this bill is here to address the issue of numbers and the issue of skills of the medical workforce that we have in these countries. And Madam Speaker, another concern that must be addressed is the inadequacies on medical products, vaccines, technologies, and required to save lives. Madam Speaker, we must also address the non-responsive health information systems. And Madam Speaker, as I finish with giving my background, Dr. Borsire says, surely, if we cannot expect different results, yet we continue to do things in the same old manner. Madam Speaker, she concludes by saying it is about unlearning what has not worked and relearning how to do things differently. Madam Speaker, this is the background upon which I present the Maternal, Newborn and Child Health Bill 2023. Madam Speaker, this is a bill of an act of parliament, a bill for an act of parliament to provide for a coordinated system for the provision of quality maternal, newborn and child health services, to provide for response to maternal and child mobility and mortality in the country, to provide for a healthcare system that facilitates the attainment of health rights for mother, child, and for connected purposes. Madam Speaker, on clause 1 is basically the citing of the title, that is the Maternal, Newborn and Child Health Act 2023. The clause 2 is just on interpretations of terms that are used, and 3 on the objects of this act. And Madam Speaker, the objects of this act is to provide for a framework for the delivery of comprehensive quality health services that meets the needs of the mothers, that meets the needs of the newborns, that meets the needs of the children. And Madam Speaker, when we talk about the mothers and in the bill, it is very specific that mothers are grouped into 2. We have the pregnant mothers. What are the services that these pregnant mothers are entitled to by the 2 levels of governments that we have in this country? And before that, Madam Speaker, it spells out services that mothers are entitled to before even they get pregnant. And next, it will spell out the services that the newborn babies are entitled to, and when they are born, there are specific services that they are entitled to until they are 12 years. Because, Madam Speaker, we must be intentional, we must do it by design, that even as children are born, there are specific services that they are given up to when they attain those years, because we must care about the growth of these children. Madam Speaker, the objects include establishing a coordinated and structured system for the provision of quality maternal, newborn, and child health care services. And Madam Speaker, we are here talking about quality, that our mothers are not only entitled to services, but these services must be quality services. Because, Madam Speaker, I said, this is the only reason that as a community, it gives us a continuity of generations, Madam Speaker. On the objects, Madam Speaker, the objects provide a framework that is responsive to causes of maternal, newborn, and child mobility and mortality. Madam Speaker, we are not only going to talk about services, but we must also be reflective on what are these causes of mortality, what are these causes of mobility, and this bill takes care of that. On the objects, Madam Speaker, it ensures that the maternal, newborn, and child care, healthcare intervention services and supplies are available and accessible to the public. That there is the issue of access that is spelled out. The objects also establish programs to expand and improve availability and accessibility of maternal, newborn, and child health services. Madam Speaker, if you reflect on the background information I gave, and specifically on the percentages that I gave from the many counties, then it means, Madam Speaker, that the percentage as reflected, you saw that, Madam Speaker, we have, for example, in Samburu, 50% of age 17 to 19 being pregnant. So it means that all these people must access certain services. These services must be deliberately made available and must be accessed by all women, wherever they are, at whatever time they need the services, and on which day, every day that they need. On the objects, Madam Speaker, the objects also promote linkages among existing programs to expand and improve the availability of and access to comprehensive community, maternal, newborn, and child health care services. It promotes the provision of proper care and assistance to mothers, newborn children, and children with special needs. And Madam Speaker, I will also be talking about special needs. There are children that have special needs. Which kind of services are they giving them? Are we just giving obvious services that we give to all children? Even when we talk about pregnant women, there's a category of women with special needs. Women who have mental problems, women who have psychological problems, women who are marginalized. Are they able to access maternal services from our health institutions and from our professional medics? Madam Speaker, the objects also promote innovative, comprehensive, and integrated approaches to the delivery of maternal, newborn, and child health services. So, Madam Speaker, the services that are captured in this bill are not only limited to curative, we are also specifically talking about promotive, we are talking about curative, preventative, and Madam Speaker, all that level of health must be provided for by our health, by this bill, by the health, the institutions, and by the help, the professionals. The bill has principles for service delivery. What are the principles of delivering the services? One is universality of access and equity in the delivery of health services, and the recognition that in offering these services, there are people that have special needs. This bill is going to spell out how that category is captured. Madam Speaker, on the principle for service delivery, this bill talks about the availability and access to services, and not only access, but timely and reliable information necessary to make an informed decision regarding one's health and treatment. And Madam Speaker, I will be demonstrating that there must be timeliness.
Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m., time to adjourn the Senate. Honorable Beatrice, you have 35 minutes left. You'll continue the next session. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 17th April 2024 at 9:30 a.m.
Yes, tunaanza mdoni, tunaanza, niko chini, niko nini.
Good morning. Mimi. Hi. How are you? Good morning. Hello. How are you? Asmio, UDA. Good morning and welcome to the live proceedings of the Senate. This being a Wednesday morning sitting dated 20th of March. The year is 2024, a broadcast equally brought to you by the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation in conjunction with the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. This morning, senators are set to consider a number of businesses. Given priority is a motion by Baringo Senator William Cheptumo on the declaration of cattle rustling and banditry as a national disaster and establishment of a special fund for victims. In this particular motion, the Senator for Baringo County, wants the Senate to resolve that the national government, through the Ministry of Interior and National Administration, and in collaboration with the Council of Governors, do declare cattle rustling as a national disaster. Establish a national task force on matters cattle rustling and banditry, and this task force will be charged with 2 responsibilities. Among them is the investigation of the causes of rampant cattle rustling and banditry in the regions as well as the country at large. The task force should also establish the extent of suffering, loss as well as damage the cattle rustling and banditry has occasioned to the communities in all the affected areas. Pursuant to standing orders of the House, a number of cabinet secretaries are set to appear before the Senate plenary this morning